And good evening, guys. We are delighted to be here again for another Blether. Welcome along. We've already got our YouTubers chomping at the bit to say hello. Ian and Dave already on there. Evening, Dave. Evening, Ian. He's just opened the 11-year-old Glenrothes from the Discovery bottling, which is the sherry cask, I believe. Absolutely beautiful.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
Julian Rickman is just poured himself the Mortlach 15 distillery label.
Just up the game a wee bit there with the Mortlach. Straight in with a high hand.
Brilliant. Dave's deciding between wine or Prosecco tonight. He hasn't got anything in his glass yet.
Hi, Phil. That's very quick on the button with the get in there with the Facebook, Phil, but you're getting trumped by YouTubers these days.
I know.
Phil's normally in there first, isn't he? Hi, Jeremy. Hi, Jeremy. How you doing? Good to see you back again.
So, yeah, I've gone for something a wee bit different tonight. My first Cote Rote cask. I bought this on my way out of the shop, so I'm just waiting to crack this one open. The
I really want to try that. So,
do you really want
to? Yeah, I'll leave him provide the sample bottle for you to fill it.
We'll see. Depends how nice you are. Depends how hard you work.
I've been working pretty hard. This is the first time I've had any time off today since last Wednesday, so that's pretty good for a part-timer.
I just thought there's the colour. I know we shouldn't hark on about colour, but we always do.
But there's something about a red wine when it's got that beautiful kind of rouge through it. It just looks stunning. I prefer that to a kind of almost Coca-Cola sherry. I love when you get a nice red wine cask and it's got that.
Yeah, and it sits through the It's got that burgundy kind of case as well, which is
great presentation as always. Yeah, absolutely.
And
I've gone slightly different. I've gone Ben Romick. So the Carrigold, which I opened a couple of weeks ago, just got into it. So a little wee bit of oxygen in there now. Lovely dram. I was eyeing that one up for weeks and weeks as well.
Yeah. I haven't tried that one yet either. So
we'll swap these. That's a fair trade.
Absolutely. So we've got Jeremy on. I tell you what I really want. Yeah, we're not going down to karaoke with Spice Girls.
No, absolutely not. That's just definitely not happening, Jeremy.
So let's bring on our guest. Who he's appeared far better dressed than me and Russell ever have been tonight.
I never had a shirt and tie on in the Blether. I used to do it for some of the tastings, but
yeah, not the shirt and tie. I've had the waistcoat on a few times, but I guess hot in the summer it just comes off not long after. So let's bring Stephen on. I'm sure you guys at home will know the man himself, Stephen Rankin. How are you, Slanger?
Nice. Great to see you. Thanks for having me on.
No, thanks for coming on.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, apologies for being a little bit formally dressed. I've just had a day of pretty important meetings. Like always, like you guys, the clock doesn't stop at 5 o'clock, does it?
No.
So I haven't left yet. So, however, I have poured myself a dram.
I'm assuming you've also got a nice pair of suit trousers and brogues on, and not the shorts that you might have been wearing all the way through. Not the shorts.
I love the big socks. Yeah,
fabulous.
So you told us off screen what you were drinking, but tell the guys at home what you've got in your glass tonight.
So I'm a huge fan of the style of the northeast Easter Rost whiskies. So Balblair, Clynelish, of course Old Broras, but and Glenmorangie as well. So, but this one is one that you guys have in the shop. This is a Balblair 1998 23-year-old. Of course, like all the new Connoisseur's Choice, or the vast majority, it's single cask. Only 170 bottles. It's at 50.5, and it's a first full bourbon barrel, which just the weight of it is perfect for first dram of the night. A really lovely balance, and it's nice and refreshing. Actually, it's got a bit pick me up, a wee bit sort of that lovely sort of lime zest, quite in sort of intense concentrate to it, and it's just lovely. And the thing I love about it is that slightly creamier texture, and you get a lot of white stone fruit coming in the back of Balblairs as well. So it's just lovely. So nice one to kick off the night.
Absolutely.
My very first Gordon MacPhail was the Blether from the Discovery range, and it was just stunning. It was actually my very first Balblair as well. Ended up buying 3 bottles of it in the end over the period of time. Haven't seen it for a while actually, but absolutely stunning dram. I love Balblair as well. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, just a really nice weight to it, nice balance.
Yeah.
Just a cracking dram.
A nice sweetness to it as well, doesn't it? It's quite an approachable dram. It's kind of one of those that you could pitch to newbie whiskey drinkers, and they would instantly kind of buy into the whiskey. It's got that creaminess, that sweet note. Yeah, the Discovery range is getting a lot of love on the chat tonight. Ian's raving about the Milton Duff sherry cask, which I think was a 11-year-old.
This you mentioned one of your drinker, one of our colleagues was on the Glenrothes 11. I think what's wonderful about the Discovery range is it's got that ability to, for those who know whiskey, it's just a really great range of whiskies for people who want to maybe just try something a little bit different, knowing that it's not going to break the bank and you're going to get a really excellent expression of something, be it sherried, bourbon character, or of course smoky. And the fact that there is a general consistency, but it changes. So if you want, sometimes it's a Glenturret in the sherry style, sometimes it's the Milton Duff, of course, which was won a few awards. And the smoky side, or sometimes it's the unpeated Bunnahabhain, of course, which is fantastic. And if you jump onto the smoky one, you've got beautiful Leitchig, and or a heavily peated Bunnahabhain, or the Kalila, of course. And if you want the bourbon style, it sort of varies between Balblairs, Tomatins, Tormores. So so there's a lovely selection in there.
Absolutely.
I think the Bunnahabhain, the heavily peated one, took me by surprise a wee bit, because I was expecting it to be really, really peaty, but it wasn't overly peaty. It was peaty, but to kind of what I would class as a standard peat level for an Islay, but it was probably heavy peated for Bunnahabhain standard or style. Like that, is it pointy? They call the peated or Tuisha peated levels. So, but ultimately a great dram at the end of the day. It's you get some really nice stuff in that Discovery range, and just does what it says, isn't it? Discovery. Let's discover that 3 kind of main flavors of whiskey. Yeah.
Take somebody who's coming into it, and they may like something. They might have tasted what you'll see in the majority of back bars and pubs and things. Be it the brilliant Glenfiddich, a great Glenlivet, or a Macallan, or and it gives them the opportunity to say, "Oh, I like that," and you go, "Well, actually, here's a way to discover something that you might not have heard of, a smaller distillery, something a wee bit different," and it just then gives them the confidence to then open up the book to a lot more distilleries, characteristics, etc. And it does it in a really effective way, because I think the wonder about so much of the Gordon MacPhail packaging these days, and even from the past, it's very transparent about what you're getting. There's tasting notes in the front of these, just as to give you an indication. It's not to preach to you, but it's to give you just an indication. So you go, okay, and then like it's all, we're all different, so not everybody's necessarily going to get those, but it's going to lead you in the direction of travel that you go, that sounds really good. And then with the other characteristics etched in the bottle, you know what you're going to get, which is wonderful. And I just think it's that sort of, call it a step 2 to those coming into whiskey.
I like a tasting note in the bottle. I think for me, I like to purchase with a tasting note because it gives me an idea of what I'm getting. But then I like to forget all about that. I'll then leave it and I'll go and try it for myself, and then I'll go back and see if what I've thought compares with what it said on the bottle. And that's what I like about it. So sometimes I find it a little bit frustrating. I understand why some people don't put tasting notes on, and it's all about kind of the discovery part of it and making up your own mind. But sometimes I like to just have a bit of a point of reference to see, just to kind of judge if I'm kind of picking up what maybe other people are. So I find them really useful.
Yeah, I think it's great. It's like you go into a restaurant, you read the menu to help you choose, and then the menu taken away or you put it aside, then you get your dish, and then you decide how much you enjoy it yourself.
Yeah, absolutely.
That's a great way of putting it, actually, isn't it? You go to a restaurant, ask for a steak, and it comes with some kind of rhubarb chutney or something like that. What's that? Oh, well, if you'd asked you, it would have said. I want an egg. Come on. Yeah. Yeah, definitely. Yeah, there's a load of pros. I think sometimes tasting notes can scare people a little bit as well. That for example, the Glendullan, they're so crystallized violet, raspberry, compote, licorice, red apple, citrus. They try it and they're like, I don't get any of that. Is there something wrong with me? You're trying to get that across to them, probably more in tastings, more than kind of people buying something from the shop. People are scared to kind of open up and say it, for probably the fear of sounding wrong or stupid, I suppose. But it's trying to get that confidence across to them and say, look, you're not going to be wrong unless you're coming out with something completely wacky. You're not going to be wrong. Everything is unique to yourself.
I start off every single tasting saying two things. There's golden rules. The first thing is no such thing as a daft question. Yeah. The second thing is this in front of you is your drink. Okay, we've poured it for you, but therefore you look around the room, we've all done it. There's 10, 20, 30, 100 different faces. None of them are the same. Yeah. So why should we all get the same flavors from the whiskey? We've all had different experiences. Some people might have been down a fish market in Skegness. Some might have been walking the streets of Seville with the oranges and with some amazing summer smells. Folk in the market in Christmas in Bavaria. Because what we do with our minds is when we smell, we associate things. And every day is a school day. So you do folk have seen me do this before, but if you pinch your nose, hold it pinched, take a drink, swirl it out, swallow it, release your nose, and ask yourself, what did it taste? The answer is absolutely nothing. Because your nose is directly, it's all connected. Your olfactory system is all connected. So why, therefore, and of course it's linked to the brain, and your brain is what's recalling the flavor. So it's about you reminiscing. So you get people who will reminisce about, do you remember those Oddfellow sweeties you got as a kid? And you go, wow, yeah, or the licorice torpedoes, or do you remember those strawberry shoelaces? Because you get, and it's things that you recall. And so you put it in your mind into words and recollections that you recall. So somebody may say raspberry compote. Somebody else might go, it reminds me of that sweetie I had when I was a kid. Or it reminds me of, being in the garden and that overripe squash raspberries that we were picking and our hands were turning red, because you maybe had that lovely experience. But it's perfect, but it's your experience. And just by talking about it will no doubt open up people's minds and just broaden it and go, actually, I get that. We've got a few things here. So when people come to the store here and book an experience, we take out these drawers, and there's 5 drawers, and one of them out comes a sort of rectangle of Harris tweed. I'll show you. I've got one.
You'll need to share the story about the minibus when everyone was on the videos.
So for example, here's the first one. If I was to hold that colour up to you, it's a lovely spring fresh green. So what flavours would you sort of associate with that? You probably associate sort of light spring type flavours, cut grass, floral blossom,
maybe apples or something like that.
Green apples, exactly. Okay, if I held this up to you and put this on the table in front of you, so for those of you who can see it, it's a sort of oatmeal-y, beigey, textured. So again, you probably think maybe a bit more maltiness, maybe a bit more cereal notes. It could be a little bit sort of the brioche bun you sometimes get, or those hay-like notes, flour, bit of biscuit, maybe things like that. Absolutely, that's exactly the thing. So what we do is use color to help influence the brain, or to activate the brain. So when you're smelling things and you do this, you are like telling people what the flavors are, or trying to explain. You're leading them. But people, because we all learn in different ways, some through sight, some through sound, you get you can help people develop their open up their minds to the flavors they're getting, and then of course it becomes a bit more second nature to people, and they start broadening their vocabulary and and what they're doing. And it's really funny because you start finding yourself doing things like, I was just on holiday there and we were going through this beautiful garden, and I'm stopping and smelling every kind of flower possible because you're trying to build up that sort of bank of sensory experience. And likewise, I'm at a market and I'm smelling things, some things I've never seen in my life before. And I'm picking them up and feeling them and smelling them, and you've got all this stuff going on because one corner's a fish market, one's fruit, one's sort of confectionery and baking and all sorts going on, spices and I'm telling my kids, I said, just take your time in here, just smell things and experience them, and true enough, just amazing, and their vocabulary about what they're eating is growing and growing because because it's all about that relationship with memory and experience. So
it is, it's all about that kind of teaching your brain. You're not teaching your brain how to smell or how to nose a whiskey. You're teaching your brain that memory side of it. Is what does it remind you of? And I think that's what people kind of forget or kind of don't get to see until they're told. Where you smell it and they're like, "Oh, that smells like raspberries," but it's whiskey. How can whiskey smell like raspberry? I'm not going to say that, but it's developing that and training your brain. It's certainly a memory training thing rather than a skill. I suppose it is. There's obviously skill to it, but if you can train your memory and smell, as you said, smell as much as you can. We had a tour with a couple of friends in our minibus, and Chris is just he was on with us, and he's just popped a wee comment on there saying "not the orange," and so we were tasting. I can't remember what distillery it was. I think Glentalker's maybe. And so we drove to we stayed in the car park and we poured a dram and we kind of talk about the distillery and have a dram of it. And Claire, who you met at the Spirit Speyside when we came up as your guests, she kind of drives the bus and reads the story of the distillery and some tasting notes and everything. So we're all sitting in the back of the bus having a dram and we're like, does anyone else get orange? Yeah, definitely getting orange. So I'm going to sweet sip it. Yeah, everyone's agreeing on orange. Claire's raking through her notes and there's definitely no mention of orange in the distillery notes or anything. And Chris is sitting in the back seat and he just opened up a mandarin or a tangerine or something. And he's sitting hammering into this. Where are we getting this orange note from? So it's easy to manipulate people as well as to what they're getting.
So here's a question. I know I'm here to answer, but the question for you guys. So summertime, the weather's a lot warmer. We've had a mini heat wave up here, nothing like down south, of course, but it's been generally a pretty nice summer. It's been relatively dry. Telling us tonight it's 12 degrees and cloudy. But how does you, and let's ask the guys and everybody, all the ladies and gentlemen listening, how does your enjoyment of whiskey change? Do you deliberately go for lighter styles? Do you have lighter character? Do you move more to that sort of bourbon, more tropical vanilla elements, or do you find yourself doing it differently? Do you make yourself more highballs? I'd love to hear what you guys do.
I definitely do. For me, bourbon whiskey all summer long, Glencadams, stuff like that, Altmoors. But also, I was in a tasting last night with a group of Americans, and most of them hadn't had whiskey before. So when we came to the peated one, some of them were trying to think when they would actually drink it. They liked it. They didn't dismiss it. But they were saying, when would I actually drink this? And I was thinking, well, you know what? I really enjoy them when I've got a bonfire in the summer outside. Or if I'm at the beach, if I'm on holiday, I like a peated whiskey then, if I've had some seafood. So it's that kind of associations. And for me, a sherry bomb is for the winter when I've been outside shoveling snow and I've come inside and I want a bit of a warm up by the fire. That's when I want a sherry bomb. So absolutely, time of year, weather, everything affects me completely.
Yeah. Summer's day, and during the summer, I tend to drink less cask strength stuff as well. I kind of go for something a bit more easier, more refreshing. Kind of that 40 to 46% kind of whiskies. I think that's a big difference as well through the day when it's hot. But yeah, bourbon casks or something fruity or sweet, maybe a rum cask this would be ideal. I think this Cote Rôti, something like that with a little bit of fruit around it as well. Just nice outdoor.
Summer fruits coming through and it beautiful, yeah.
Yeah. Phil Dixon's coming in saying he really loves a peaty whiskey on a warm evening.
Well, do you know that I get that completely, and it's something just like you were talking about, Russell. Put the fire pit on in the back garden. We had an old barbecue that my son, who's 18 now, but last year took this old barbecue. It was getting it rust. We'd had it. I think it was a wedding present, and so my wife and I have been married 21 years now. So you can tell how old it is. And yes, it was getting rusty around the sides and things, but we cut the legs off it and made it this high. And it's just a square thing. It was nothing fancy. But for charcoal, it wasn't gas or anything. And all we do is stick that in between everybody on the patio, sits on top of an old paving slab, and we just get that going. And of course, it gets even people who are not fans of peated whiskey, they'll enjoy them. So again, starting with the Litchig from Discovery or an Ardmore works really well, and there's one on the go at the moment, which is just absolutely superb. If you ever get the older styles that have got a bit more sherry, so the 96, 7, 8 in the distillery bottling that we had, it was 43%. Just the balance is superb, but the smoke is just beautifully layered. So when you're sitting in front of the fire, you get that warmth. And of course, in Scotland, of course, it's getting cooler, generally quite quickly and mainly. So it just works incredibly well. And of course, those bourbon Kalilas, that sweetness, but with the smoke. So just what our fellow viewer was saying, just beautiful.
Well, the sweetness of that whiskey gives you it's almost like the sweetness of shellfish, kind of langoustine prawns, a bit of lobster, that kind of sweetness comes through. Yeah.
Mm. Do you have a preference of cask style, Stephen, or is it purely on occasion dependent?
Depends on the occasion. I keep surprising myself, and it's really, I suppose it's the same for you guys who are in the business as well. What is your favorite child? You do have a favorite, but there's so many. And some of them you like better at times than others. So there is. I think it's when you're presented with a smaller selection, you think, right, that's my go-to. I'm going to have one of those. But when you do have such a beautiful range and a big range to select from, actually the joy is trying the different ones. It's that whole experimentation and wanting just always to learn and to try new things. And I've got a few just by my side here. I showed you the Glenrothes there, but let's touch on the slightly smokiness. So here's one I think you guys have as well. So it's the Litchig 2001. But this is look at the color. So it's 20 years old, refill sherry butt. So it's 58.4, so really good strength. Again, perfect for a summer night, I would say. It's got that richness, but the alcohol keeps it fresher, keeps it a little bit younger. So it's robust. It can take a little bit of water. It can take quite a lot of water, in fact. And what a cracking dram. And this is exclusive in the UK, so you've got it. And that's why I picked it tonight to showcase, because I think it is one of these cracking sitting outdoor summertime drams. And it does what you're talking about, Russell. Litchig's got that sort of beachcomber, shellfish, sea element. And of course, we all know we talk about the smoky bacon and that salinity that you get through that. But it's just wonderful. But the sherry gives it that richness and warmth. So again, picture yourself in the garden having a dram. You might not even have a bonfire or a fire pit on or anything, but it just gives you that sense, of being out by the sea or in the outdoors. Just brilliant. So
last time I had a fire pit on was the Glen Scotia. It was one of the distillery exclusives. Was
the port cask one,
yeah,
that's a good job. Yeah,
I'm actually in the mood for a fire pit now. So go out and get it going. It's too late for that, but hey ho.
But there's that kind of changes in cask as well. You had a Glen Grant. I can't remember which one it was that we had, Mike, in the shop. The Glen Grant, we had a bit of it. That was another
Aberdeenshire exclusive.
Yeah. And But the nose in that, for such a young whiskey, it was like a proper old-fashioned Scotch whiskey. It smelled, to me, I kept on explaining to people, it smells like your grandparents' living room. That smell of waxed furniture and, just that lovely old-fashioned house smell, which I just absolutely adored. I couldn't share it enough. And that was that kind of took me in a completely different direction. But now we're back onto kind of younger ones, a bit of light peat and smoke. I love this Benromach. So yeah, your mood and thought of flavour and just changes all the time, doesn't it?
Yeah.
That was a great example of a cask that you wanted to be like 3-4 times bigger. That Glengarry.
Yes. Yeah, absolutely.
A bottomless cask. Yeah. But isn't it interesting if you speak to Dr. Bill Lumsden, and he'll tell the story of his putting the whiskey through gas spectrometers and 386 flavors from whiskey. It's amazing, from 3 simple ingredients plus maturing the oak, of course, and it's just incredible. So that's the joy of it, isn't it? It's the joy of being able to try things, and even within distillery bottlings, take Benromach, the fact that as a distillery it does these lovely segues, as it were, to the core style. So the 10, 15 cask strength, and to a point at 21. Just you can see the evolution of that, and it's just a wonderful sequence and great quality product. Of course, just look at all the awards it wins. But then bookended by the likes of the organic, by the caramalt, by these contrasts to that. So it has that experimentation, which is just wonderful. To be able to do, and a wee confession, I love the caramel, and I finished the bottle with friends, and there were some other pals that are due to come around this weekend, and I thought, do you know what, I love them to try this, because it's just a little bit different, and they love different drams. So of course everybody's sold out, and so I finally managed to get one, just through a retailer down south, which was a miracle. I don't know, I couldn't understand. But I'm just really excited about cracking another one open and sharing it, because it is so different. And I just love putting it up against, the 10, 15 and saying, now try this.
Yeah.
And it's a wonderful experience. And the quality is what underpins everything, as you know from Gordon MacPhail.
Yeah.
And so it's just got beautiful weight and texture to it, and just something a bit different.
Fantastic.
Yeah. We have got a bottle of the caramel.
I was going to say, I think we've still got a bottle, but I sometimes hate seeing that online, because you think, well, I'll go and buy one tomorrow, but then of course you talk about it online and then people buy it. But hey, that's.
I didn't see it. I must admit, I missed that. I didn't see it on your website. I didn't think you had it left. So
yeah, I just double checked. We've certainly got one left.
And we do like sharing the love. So the Huntley Whisky Shop, I think, has some as well. So we like to comment and help other people out as well.
Mm-hmm.
But you were mentioning it just a wee while ago about being on holiday and encouraging your kids to smell stuff and get involved and to think differently. Was it like that for you? I mean, with it being a family business, was it like that for you growing up? Were you given those kind of opportunities and encouragement to try and?
I was, where I grew up was so it's been relevant to this call. So I was born in Aberdeen. Mum was working through in Aberdeen, obviously met my father, they married, etc. And then when I was very young, we moved with my father through his work, moved to Inverness. So I didn't grow up in Elgin, so I wasn't doing what maybe my cousins were doing and sort of coming in with dad. But what I would do is I'd come through quite often at the weekends, especially through a lot of the sports. And then we would spend time with my grandparents, a lot of time with them and my cousins. And so I would come in on a less frequent basis. But you would get these incredible smells because, even the building in South Street we're in at the moment, it used to, when I was a kid, it still had the layers of warehousing, so I'm 51 years old now. So as a young kid, you're smelling, seeing the tea chests, seeing the bags of roast coffee or coffee beans about to be roasted on the premises. You're seeing them cooking the hams and going across the road and seeing all the hands of bananas laid out, just every day being turned so they ripen and they're to the spot that they're ready to sell, things like that. So you get these very different smells. than more clinical smells of going grocery shopping today that you get, because it's a lot of it's obviously prepackaged, etc., etc.
Yeah.
So it was very different, for us as a kid, and also because at the time, like Inverurie, like the more rural parts, anywhere really out with Aberdeen, they're much more rural settings, even Inverness back then. So we lived on the edge of town, so we were in the woods all the time. So you're getting lots of these smells, be it earth and the farmers doing what they're doing, be it cutting silage or spreading the muck in the fields or whatever they're doing. You're much more full of senses than you probably get today as a child,
And there's not much sense in sitting in front of a PlayStation, is it? There's only so much you can smell doing that.
Yeah, life is, I suppose, for anybody who's probably 30, 40 years old and above, is probably more four-dimensional than those who spend a lot of time in much more sort of, indoor environments mainly. Yeah, this is not exclusive. There's a lot of people, and it's great to see so many kids involved and still involved in queuing to be involved in scout movements and voice brigade and all that. So that you can't encourage enough of that. But it's to bring balance to life. And those who do go out and be it cycling, mountain biking, and things. And I think during lockdown, a lot of people did that, and they suddenly realised some of the stuff that was on their doorstep, seeing wildlife that they didn't know was over the hedge, basically, or down the road. And so it was, and it's all these experiences again that take you back to that. So while I didn't grow up in Elgin, therefore getting that direct, the things I was doing in life and the amount of attention or interaction I got with the family through here was still significant. So I did get a great chance to be a spectator from the side, but just not as in depth. But what I did notice is when I did start, over 22 years ago now, with the company, just how quickly, it was almost second nature, how quickly I took to it. Yeah. And I was given some great advice by my father in my late teens, just to the point that we're all discovering a little bit more of life. And when they're out, you might be opening their drinks cabinet and seeing that can of McEwen's Export or whatever it would have been, and their bottle of whatever.
Oh, lager or something, yeah.
Exactly, that was the vintage. And but you would do that, and my father said to me, "Look, whiskey is a wonderful drink. Respect it. You're going to go out with the boys and it's, whiskies, it's the man's drink type thing." And it was, very stereotypical, nothing like today, of course. But so and maybe you were thinking you'll emulate your father drinking and his group is in his sort of peer group drinking it. But he said, don't. You're going to enjoy the things, the sweeter things. You're going to put your Juki, your Coca-Cola and the lemonade or whatever you're going to want. But don't go crazy. Don't abuse whiskey. Respect it, and in time you will respect it. And you'll learn to really enjoy it. So I did that. So and you guys will be the same. I've stood at so many exhibitions, shows, tastings, and you'll have somebody or thousands of people come up to you and go. You would offer them a try of something, and they go, "Oh no." When I was 17, or 18, I opened Dad's bottle when he was out, and they can't look at it again. Or at a party, your youthful parties, they did something, and they can't even smell it today, and it's just completely ruined it for them. So that bit of advice was key. Just respect it, and I think it should be the same about all alcohol. To be honest, just respect it, because you'll enjoy it more. You'll actually get more from it, and you also might learn to manage it and your behaviours and everything associated with it. So
there's no point in having a great van if you wake up and you don't remember it.
Correct. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, our motto is drink better, drink less, is what we always say.
Well, it's a trend in society. People are definitely drinking a better quality and ultimately a little bit less of it, which is a very sensible thing to do. So.
Yeah, there was mixed reports during the pandemic of people doing excess drinking, but also guys like ourselves were getting that little bit because people were getting to the pub and they weren't spending their 50, 60, whatever it was in the pub over a weekend. So they thought, well, let's buy something better than what I would normally buy and enjoy it and sit at home and enjoy it. So I think it opened a lot of people's eyes, and a lot of people are more open to experimenting with different styles of, whether a different style of whiskey or maybe trying to rum for the first time or things like that. People were a lot more comfortable doing that in their own home than they were over a bar. So it did open up. I mean, our independent bottling sales during lockdown went crazy, selling out everything pretty much. Yourselves, and we tried new guys like Pearls of Scotland, James Eady, these kind of guys, and it was great for that, for getting people to open up and try something different.
But did you not think, though, that there was an element of a revolution? Every crisis brings opportunity, and I think for people in our industry, we created the opportunity of, actually, from the comfort of your own home, here's a selection box of 5 amazing whiskies that you may never have tried for a reasonable price, that all of a sudden you create a wonderful experience. And then, like tonight, when you hang up, you're not having to get a taxi, and however, it doesn't replace being in people's company, being in the atmosphere of a great pub, etc., etc. But it was a great way to experience wonderful whiskies in a group of people that inevitably are of a similar mindset, and therefore you created, it either created or developed a lot of wonderful communities, and I think that was a real revelation, and I think it goes to show that going forward, it can still be part of the experiences brands and retailers and outlets can offer, but shouldn't take away from people actually wanting to come into the places to do in-person tastings and things. But just that other option, because all of a sudden for people like us in the Northeast, it means that you could do a tasting that involves people from the south coast of England, Wales, Ireland, anywhere. It doesn't matter. Oh, within reason and within obviously being able to legally send stuff. So what a great opportunity. So build it into the mix now to build advocates of what your values are, what you stand for, and what the brands themselves stand for. What a great opportunity.
It certainly is. It's it opened us up. Russell and I were doing 5-6 tastings a week, virtually. What I loved about it, first and foremost, we met so many new people, guys like Jeremy Lott, who's online watching tonight. He's just commented saying he certainly drunk better when having a tasting with Stephen. He loves the G&M tastings at SOS. So yeah, meeting guys like that, people from overseas, obviously, until kind of we saw that kind of take a sharp downturn when Brexit kind of came into play. That was a tough one, because we had guys from France, from Spain, from Norway, and all these guys were really heavily involved and regular as well, and doing it all, almost every tasting. And the other thing I loved about it was, as you say, you turned off the laptop in your home, and for Russell and I, we didn't have all the glasses to clean up either, which is a big break. You could just go to bed or go downstairs and watch a telly or switch off. You didn't have that cleanup, which was great.
One of the things I really enjoyed as well, because when we initially started doing the Zoom tastings, and we were doing 4 each every weekend for a period of time. And initially, I always, because I'm in Aberdeenshire, I always assumed everyone else was in Aberdeenshire on screen. And you quickly realise they weren't, because all the accents were different, and there was, everybody had a different kind of Mancunian accent or a Scouse accent, or they were all London or whatever. And you thought, so you obviously you changed your frame of mind to, right, guys, where are we tonight before we start? But what I loved about that was that then gave me the opportunity to talk about Aberdeenshire and to do almost a kind of tourist bit, which is fabulous, because people had never been to Scotland. They're like, oh, right, okay, let me tell you where you need to go for your next holiday and stuff. So it gave you a different angle to go at as well, which is, as a proud Scotsman, was fantastic.
You can imagine sitting there half an hour into the tasting, and the guys from London or something, like, what's this guy talking about?
Well, there's a bit of that as well. You had to slow what you were saying. Subtitles would help, maybe.
But isn't it wonderful? This year is probably the year that more of the usual and traditional whiskey events will come back online, and but now you've got a new friend base. So rather than saying, oh well, we'll see you online on a Friday, or you and your pals getting together for a tasting on a whatever night it was in the week. Some of ours would coordinate, you go out and do the clap for the NHS and things at 8 o'clock, 8:15, you'd come back in and switch on, and then you start, another tasting, But what a great opportunity now to say, I'll tell you what, I'll see you at that whiskey fair, I'll see you at that whiskey show. Let's go as a group, and then just reinforce that friendship bond, and just brilliant, just incredible. So
we've struggled to get to any of the festivals recently, but Russ and I were speaking the other day. We've made a conscious choice to make an effort next year to say, right, this is the ones we're going to.
I think I started complaining about it. I think that was the thing. Why do we not get him? He's always working me. Why do we never get to Dublin Festival? So
well, just I'm going to give you a wee plug for two things, and one of them is at the end of this month, Friday the 2nd of September, and Saturday 3rd, and I think there might be something on the 4th as well. And that is, as you know, there's the famous Spirit of Speyside Whisky Festival in at the end of April, start of May every year, coincides with the bank holiday, the first bank holiday in May, which is wonderful. That's where you come to gorgeous Speyside, and they've got up to 700 events, but spread all over. So going to distilleries that are never normally open, or doing events with restaurants or sort of comedy nights, music nights, you name it. It's all happening all over Speyside. Mm-hmm. So, but at the end of this month, on the 2nd of September to the 4th, we've got Distilled. So it takes that and distills it and puts it under one roof in the town hall in Elgin. So you can come and see all these distillers, but under one roof with masterclasses, which are really affordable, with great drams. But drams you won't taste in the little booths from all the distillers. But you'll meet icons of the industry as well as you wander around. Get to try some amazing food, cocktails, and all of that. So, if folk are looking for a little short break, a long weekend, that's a great one to go to. Before the weekend before that, I think it is Whisky Over Ice, and that's in Inverness Ice Centre. So when the curling season's not on, they board the floor down, and so which is a great Whisky Over Ice. It's nice, and it's a cracking venue though. It's a big open space, loads of different people. So again, it's not connected to a retailer, which is great. It just gives you the opportunity to go and see all the brands and enjoy experiencing different whiskies, and then being able to then come back and engage with people like yourselves, your local retailers, to say, look, I tried that, and the more feedback the consumer can give us, the better you can greater a range you can select for them, and the more you can offer. So
it's getting a wee bit more vibrant in Inverness, because they just had the Whisky Festival not that long ago, and I saw that one, Whisky Over Ice, and I thought that was, I kind of looked at it, I tried to figure out what they meant, and then I realised it was in the ice rink, and I thought, wow, that's great. Really fantastic words, yeah.
They did the one at, was it Eden Court, just the start of July, and I think it just goes to show the popularity of the product these days. The fact that there's enough interest to support all these different events. So, and I think the big thing is just what you were doing, Russell, is actually advertising and telling people about the wonderful place we live, so that they do say, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make a weekend of that. Let's take the train up and fly out. It's so accessible from London or Bristol or Exeter to jump in an EasyJet and come into Aberdeen or Inverness, and what, an hour and a half later you're in the Highlands in Aberdeenshire, and likewise on the Sunday you're back down and you're home in no time at all.
Absolutely. I'm a Highlander by birth. I was born in Inverness as well, so I've been in Aberdeenshire for such a long time now. I'm probably more Aberdeenshire. My heart's still in the Highlands, obviously. But we.
You're going to start singing.
Probably. Wait till I get my third dram for it.
Definitely was for Martin.
We love to promote Aberdeenshire, because Aberdeenshire is often the corner of Scotland that's forgotten about from a tourism point of view. It's always Edinburgh, the West Coast, and I suppose Murray to a certain degree probably is a little bit forgotten about as well.
Aberdeen and Murray, I sat in the wonderful creation, which was Sir Ian Wood created Opportunity Northeast, and he had 5 angles to it. One was food, drink, and food and drink and agriculture, and it was all about the food. I sat on the board with the wonderful Pat MacPhail, and the people on it were really dynamic people, you know, Alistair McPhee, and there's too many to mention. But the passion they had for this corner and this part of the world, and it was all about then how do we make the most of it? How do we link tourism with food production and drink production, and what can we do more to really put it on the map? And you know, it was a great experience, and there was a lot of good done, and because it is an absolutely stunning part of the world. You know, we've got castles, we've got amazing beaches, we've got beautiful hillsides and glens and hills, and you know, if you're into anything outdoor or history or anything, and I think it's really interesting when you see people from America coming over and the power that things like television has, and it can be outlander.
Yeah.
Actually, you get a lot of guys coming across, and they're here to play golf and the great courses, of course, which we're blessed with. But they bring lots of their family, and they're out doing tours based on an Outlander series. You know, they want to see the castles and see see if they can find the handsome Jamie. You know,
indeed.
But people don't realise how important the northeast and Aberdeenshire is to whiskey as well, with the barley and the peat up at St Fergus and all these aspects of it is so important. But I suppose it's kind of the less glamorous side. I suppose it's not the final product in your hand as much as the production part of it.
I think for most people, once you get to our level, you get completely obsessed by fields of barley and peat grounds and stuff like that. But for most people, it's not a side of things they really think about.
I think that's changing. People are far more with this craft culture that's kind of come in. People are far more interested in where your barley is coming from, you know, the process, you know, what's going into any drink, whether it's gin or beer or whiskey. You know, people are so focused on finding out and wanting to find out more. So I'm hopeful that kind of change in attitude for young people as they grow. We'll say, well, let's go and see the fields where the barley is grown. Let's go up to St Fergus and see the peat, or Port Gordon where the maltings are and things like that. And kind of there is going to be that more focus in the area, which would be fantastic for us being a retailer in the area as well.
Yeah. I don't know if many whiskey drinkers know the importance of Aberdeenshire for peat. You know, the vast majority of the peat used in whiskey comes from Aberdeenshire. And everybody probably thinks that, you know, they see the pictures in Ireland, so therefore all comes from there, you know. But no, it's not the case. So it's everything is so interesting, and I suppose there's everybody in their own way will have an eye on what's going on in the world at the moment. But if you look at Ukraine and you hear the news that over a third of the world's grain comes from Ukraine, well, when that's not necessarily available, what does it do to everything else? Well, it creates much more demand on what does exist, and therefore it has the economic pressures that brings, forcing prices up and all the rest of it. But you've got a lot of distilleries in Scotland that, like Benromic, only uses Scottish barley. So all of a sudden that puts a lot of pressure on. You know, they were buying that, but now there's so much more competition for that. You've got some distilleries that grow their own, like Arbiki, and some that are contracting. I've started solely contracting with farmers just in their vicinity, just to give them secure access to the stocks, to the barley. The big risk is eggs and basket stuff. What happens if the crop fails, you know, 1 year? What happens if, you know, particular strains become more affected by, you know, Mother Nature, be it you know, molds and moisture and dew, etc., mildew, etc. So your decisions come with risks, but it's fascinating how these global events suddenly put a lot of pressure on something that we all assume, or a lot of people just assume that are 100% Scottish, come from Scotland, you know. So. Yeah,
absolutely. Yeah,
English barley, Canadian, American, Australian, Canadian. It all has an importance to the Scottish whisky market. So.
Yeah, and I was watching a YouTube video from the Edinburgh Whisky Academy with Vic Cameron, and they were speaking about, you know, about the importance of barley and the great resistance and kind of breeding barley and all this kind of thing. And what they were saying was, if it gets to the point where it's not in demand, we'll just buy from somewhere else. And it's that simple as it. We're not focused on Scottish barley, and it was sad to hear, but at the point of that provenance and that kind of passion for Scotch, but also at the same time, you're like, well, it is a business at the end of the day, and if needs must, that's where we source it from.
The challenge is, when I started 22 years ago, there was only 82 operational distilleries. There's now 138 or something. And in that time, people have all been increasing production. Look at the wonderful job that Glenfiddich and Glenlivet have done increasing their operations here in Speyside and many others. But fantastic, so that's more demand. Is there sufficient supply within Scotland? Well, the answer is no. So they have to. People have to buy, and unlike grapes, and guest terroir's got an importance. Just listen to Mark Rainier when he was at Urquhart and now what he's doing at Waterford. But yeah, it has an importance. But at the same time, at the end of it, it's very, very ultimately very quite subtle. And so therefore, buying the grain coming from elsewhere has less of that impact. The flavours we're all enjoying in the glass. So
I think that brings us round to Jeremy's question. He's asking how the cairn distillery is going.
The great news is the cairn spirit is running. And it is beautiful. Thank you. So
drink that, absolutely.
So Vary Winters is our distillery manager, and she's what a cracking professional distiller. She is brilliant, and she's the team that we're building there with Ali and Wayne, and they're just gelling really well. They're doing a fantastic job. We took a few weeks just to get the stills up and running. Just so what we were making, we didn't just decide, right, that's the cairn. We said no, the cairn's going to be a character. So it's going to take the stills to bed in. And of course they'll carry on bedding in. But we need the stills to bed in. We need to be happy with the flavors we're getting and what it is, and that we can obviously do it with consistency. So we had the most wonderful day where directors joined the distilling team on site, and it came to the point that Mary was absolutely delighted with where she had settled in terms of the cut points for the spirit, the fermentation times, all the distillers are dealing with a whole suite of decision points, from the strains of barley that you're using through to obviously your mill settings, obviously the making sure your temperatures are right for your waters going into the mash, and then your yeast types and your fermentation times. And then of course, then your cut points. You're going to go for a higher cut point, lower cut point, how long you're running the stills for, all of these things. And so they spent time with that, and now they've got it. And it was glorious. The spirit was absolutely tremendous. It had a sort of malty but sweet, almost cream soda type note to the base of it. Beautiful. And then with just layer upon layer of fruit, finishing with some really lovely tropical fruit, more like pineapple, and it's got a sort of medium to full body, as we'd expect, because it's the formulation of our stills. There's two big wash stills that feed two small, very small spirit stills each one. So there's a 3-still system. So
okay.
The mash, the wash still feeding in the two small ones. Now, so we're thrilled. So in terms of the overall cairn distillery, though, it's, as you can imagine, all the landscaping's happened, so the grass is beginning to grow. All the final touches to the visitor side of things and the experience and the hospitality element to it, they're all just being finished off. So we've, the contractor's done, to be honest, a great job. The team, the Gordon MacPhail team, the project manager we've had, and the exec that's been steering this, together with our non-execs on the board and on the committee that we've had running this, have done a really cracking job. The world's thrown everything against you to get this done in time, so we're actually really chuffed that we are where we are at this point. I would like to say we'll be coming open in the autumn time, so people can begin to come and see our team. We've been recruiting, so we've got the team in place. They're undergoing some training. I had a wonderful afternoon with them on Tuesday, I think it was, just doing an induction about the history of Gordon MacPhail and the part they're going to play as part of Gordon MacPhail, but at the cairn. And what an opportunity for anyone. It doesn't matter if you're a host and going to be guiding guests around the place, or a distiller, or this is the first time. We're not reopening an old distillery. You're making history. You're setting the bar. You're setting the standards. And what a great gift for young people and people that we've got coming on board, industry veterans, some of them, and people with from all sorts of backgrounds and walks of life, all with different and brilliant skills that will come to bring this whole thing to life. So it's really exciting. I was saying to them, I was really, passionately thrilled for them to be able to be in that position to set the bar and create be the first. So, first man on the moon type thing, First.
Yeah. So is it right that you're now the distillery that's furthest upstream of the Spey?
Yeah.
You overtook the Spey distillery in that regard, didn't you? For cairn.
There's Speyside distillery up in Newtonmore. Yeah. So we're but because of where we are, as you turn into Speyside, as it were, from A9, we're the first distillery you come to, and we are right on the banks of the River Spey, of course. And the vistage from the distillery, and then the way it's been designed, it's like you're walking around, and because of the curve, every window is almost like a little postcard showing you a different picture. One's looking sort of across the river up at the Cromdale Hills. The next one's looking up the river, seeing part of the Grampians, and then at the Stillhouse you're looking straight out over the heart of the Grampians, and it's just spectacular. And every day is different because of the weather systems we have here. Some days the mist's down, you can't see anything. The next day it's blue skies and it's crisp and there's still patches of snow in it, and it's just, that for your office window won't be bad.
Yeah, absolutely.
I passed on my way to Ardnamurchan. I'm trying to think how long ago that was. It was definitely a building site, but the curve was definitely there. But I'm thinking, would that have been 2 years ago? Or would that have been last year?
Probably last year. We managed to get the go. We got the go ahead in 2020, and work started July of that year.
Yes, it must have been last year we went past.
So
we're going to Ardnamurchan in October, so I'll get to go past again. So might just have to drop in past if it's managed to be open by then.
Yeah, well, just so you know, there will be. You'll probably see quite a lot of things beginning to happen over the next, probably from September onwards. But there'll be a booking system, and so you can go online and book your tours, because that's going to be managing to make sure everybody gets the best possible experience. Creating a booking system so that people can come and manage it and enjoy it for the splendor that it is. So
my wife's begun to accept that when we go on holiday, we always go to distilleries, so it's just part of the. As everybody else who works in the whiskey industry, better half expects now anyway.
Go to every bar, every shop, and every distillery you pass.
Yeah, you can't help, or at least at the very least, you stop at the roadside to take a photo of.
Well, that's right. That's right. It was closed.
Let me have a wedding ring made of a whiskey stave. That was her committing to the cause.
That's a good quote, yeah.
Oh, that's lovely.
It's so a little bit more about yourself, Stephen. When you grew up, you say you grew up in Aberdeen and moved to Inverness, and then kind of found yourself in Elbow for the job. Was it always kind of on your radar to be involved in the whiskey, or did you start pursuing a different career path altogether?
Oh, totally. So I moved back and studied at university in Aberdeen. Got my degree as a quantity surveyor. Moved on. Had a wonderful experience in that hadn't received results. I think our sort of last exam I had finished, and we'd had maybe a week or so just doing the last things. It was a 5-year honours degree with a sandwich placement in industry. So what did I do? I remember going to Edinburgh on the Thursday and having an interview, and then stayed overnight the Wednesday night with a good friend of mine. Turned up the interview, thought it went okay. Really great group of guys, and came back up the road to Aberdeen that night. And then on the Friday, I got a phone call and said, "Hello, Stephen." It was I think it was Frank Gervin at the time. He said to me, "Stephen, thanks for coming down yesterday, and we'd like to offer you a job as a graduate surveyor." I said, "Oh, thank you very much, Frank. That's wonderful. You know, do you want to share with me the details?" And he said, "Yeah, salary wasn't, as a graduate, it wasn't very great, but it was okay. You know, it was what it was. First rung in the ladder and all that." So when do I start, Frank? And he said, "Monday." In Aberdeen, Frank. How am I going to find accommodation? So all the challenges. So, but I had friends in Inverness that happened to family friends that owned a flat in Aberdeen, in Edinburgh rather, a beautiful flat just on Queen Street, which is one of the ones that run parallel, of course, with George Street and Princess Street.
Yeah.
It's on the north side. So I got to the windows, everything, the building faced north. So I got a wonderful, beautiful north light, as it were, but also looking north to our homelands and God's country. But it was just lucky because, you know, people that had been in it had finished. They used it as a family through the summer to holiday there. It was a big property, and it was just perfect. And so I was allowed. They said, "Look, you can stay in over the summer, but not give you the time to go and find a job. Go and find a place, you know, a more permanent place." So that worked really well. So I ended up in Edinburgh for almost 7 years. The structure is you're as a graduate, you're obviously working towards your professional qualifications. So within a couple of years, I was sitting my RSS exams, which I passed first time, and then became chartered. I moved to a different practice, and then just at a time. It was an international practice, and there was a sort of a moment where I could have moved internationally, maybe gone and worked in the Hong Kong office or whatever. Alternatively, but Hong Kong at that time was quite interesting because that was when, in 2000, when it was been handed back to the Chinese. Yeah. So that was a bit of a jump. But also, the owner of the practice, it was a big practice, as you can imagine. With it was based out of Birmingham, called Bucknell Austin, and David Bucknell was retiring, and he didn't have any family that would take it over. So they went down the route of a management buyout, and that went well. And I was working with great people in Scotland. They had offices in Glasgow and Edinburgh, and projects all over the place. And it was great diversity of work, and it was good for your CV. But I found myself, just as they went through that management buyout, I just started to question, because a couple of the senior people that were my direct line managers left and set up themselves. And I thought to myself, why are they moving? What's going on here? So, and it still left, there was a really good guy, Charlie Martin, and Willie Allen, who were there, who to this day still have my utmost regard. Great guys. But beyond them, there's people I didn't know, and I didn't know what the future was necessarily going to look like there. So I decided, at the same time, I'd sort of expressed an interest of what is the situation in the family business back in Elgin. And at that time, the third generation were looking long and hard at what it means to them, what it means to the future, and they wholeheartedly desire to be independent and family owned, and have family involved in the running of the business, and that was important because that's part of your identity. I'm the eldest of the fourth generation, so it just came to a junction, and it was something that I was showing an interest in, something that they were showing an interest in, and so I had a formal interview. None of my mother, because it's my mum's side of the family. Rosemary's the eldest of the third generation, followed by Ian, then the late my uncle David, the late David Urquhart, and then Michael Urquhart. And just as a wee side note, Ian and Michael recently were in the Queen's Birthday Honours list for birthday this year, and obviously our platinum jubilee, and they were made awarded CBEs, Commanders of the British Empire, which was just fantastic for them, and so thoroughly deserved, because the amount of work, both in terms of within the industry and obviously Gordon MacPhail, but more in the industry and locally in business and charity and everything else.
Was it for services to whiskey, or was it for
services to whiskey and charitable work, and obviously that goes into, you're promoting the local and the community, working for the local community as well, and just outstanding, and just it was so much pride in the family to see, and those who have worked with them, to see them winning those awards, so that was great. So yeah, I was saying, I was the eldest, so very much the guinea pig. But as a family, we didn't want to. We employ a lot of families and people within, fathers, and then maybe their sons coming in, or mothers, and they worked alongside sons or daughters. We've got situations where husbands and wives work for us, but what we couldn't do is have something that created seen as, the family come in and get the job. So nepotism was something that we're really, really conscious of. So you came in and you did a management training program, a leadership development program. And because it's important that we did come from different walks of life, otherwise you'll just end up being conditioned to do it the way it's always been done. So we had to come in and yes, learn every aspect of Gordon MacPhail. So after the first 18 months, 2 years, there probably wasn't a job within the business I couldn't do, from slicing ham in the deli here to rolling the casks, dipping casks, doing the analysis, doing the filtration. I wrote the whole book on how we were doing the cask disgorgement through to the bottling process, color coding all the pipes and how to change filters and all of that, with a wonderful woman, June, who she taught me all of that aspect. And then when she was coming up for retirement, and that was the way of it with Gordon MacPhail people, it was a career job for life. And so when she retired, and a fine gentleman called Stan Main, who very, very sadly passed away recently, and we're still working for us, but just so sad. But Stan came in and took that, but he used the sort of knowledge from June, but with my procedural guide, and then he made it his own and developed it. And then again, he took on people as his proteges to work there. So that was wonderful. But the point is, we got to learn everything. And then the last thing you did was, having followed the whiskey. So I spent the first, X number of months at Ben Romick learning how to make whiskey, then going to the maltsters and learning all about barley and malting barley, and then working with cooperages and learning about the wood. So at the time it was the Taylors at Speyside Cooperage, and we were obviously they were key supplier to us, and we were a fairly key customer, I would have thought. But also in Jerez with our bodegas down there. So again, they're family run. We've been working with these guys for those folk for decades. And then the relationship with the sherry houses, where that's a century-old relationship. So you learn all about all of these really, really important aspects to the business, because our business is based on relationships. It's like tonight, the relationship with you guys, but the relationships we create with the consumer and the people. And then the values that were then installed in us, as well, from my grandfather, who unfortunately passed away in 2001. So I didn't get a chance to work with him, but I did get a chance to spend time with him, obviously through youth, but towards the end, just asking him all sorts of questions. I went and we've got an internal sort of newsletter, and I was asked, if you had a time machine, where would you go back to? And I said I would go back to spend more time with my grandfather and great grandfather, and meeting the people they met, to understand how whiskey was, and why did we do that? Why didn't we do that? What was happening? To get even greater clarity. To be sitting in the auction of Strathisla Distillery, or Milton Distillery in 1950, wow, how cool would that have been? We missed out on it, and it went to Shivers Brothers, who had been bought in 1949 by Seagram's. So just amazing. So I would have loved to have gone back and just things we do today and know today, to ask them the questions. Would have been amazing. So you learn everything, and then the last thing you do is the hard bit, the things that you guys do, which is obviously selling the stuff. Everything else is process driven, but also be it learning all the back office about export and all the paperwork involved, the finance aspect of it, the importance of the money circle, of course, and all these things that you need to know in business. But then taking the skills that I had as a surveyor and project manager, and that sort of attention to detail and processes there overlapped, and just then completely fueled by the passion I'd grown to have in it, I then was put out on the road. Well, no, that's not true. I experienced going around with all the salespeople all over the country and spending a bit of time, a week here, a week there, with people going into the international markets. That was really valuable. And then one of our guys left, John. He left. He went back to a company he worked with in the past. John was coming to the end of his sort of career, and so he's going back to the brand side rather than what we were doing as the wholesale side. So I applied for the job. You had to. It was about, once you finished your thing, so this is your first job, you've got to apply for it. You might not get it. So I made sure I got it by working hard, preparing all the right presentations for the interview, etc. And internal people in the business applied for it. External people applied for it, and they were going to always pick the best person. Now, fortunately, I got it, but under no
you had to earn it.
Clear to me that, look, you've got this, but you've got all your colleagues looking over your shoulder now, and you better prove yourself, boy, So the pressure was way more than anybody who could have come and got that job. So, funnily enough, day one, and for every day after that, you're up at the first light, out in the road, planning well, preparing well, working every hour of every day that God gave you because you needed to prove yourself. And I remember at the time we were sending one lorry to Skye every fortnight. And by the end of that, or by the middle of that summer, we were sending 2 lorries every week to Skye alone, because I increased sales. I think it was about 60% 45% or something year one. But from a guy who was doing a great job, but I just left no stone unturned and just put my life and soul into it. Every night, because you ended up staying away a bit, every night I would make sure I had dinner with the owner of the hotels to get to win and just to become friends and understand the local market better. And they would then introduce me to people. And there was stuff that my uncle would have done, uncles plural would have done in various places and markets, and following, almost the values of what my Uncle David had taught me. And then, unfortunately, things were going great. A couple of personal things were happening. I was having a bit of success in the world of curling, and myself and 3 friends won the Scottish Championships, and that made us the Scottish champions for the following 12 months. So that meant we were going to the European Championships to represent the country, and that was vitally important, because if you didn't do well at the Europeans, you didn't get your berth at the Worlds. If you didn't get your berth at the Worlds, you didn't get Olympic points for the Olympic cycle. So that was important. So I used all my holidays to compete with curling, and because of, again, it couldn't be seen to be favoritism, so I didn't get any extra time. So I just had to use it for that. The good thing was the Highlands, of course, in the winter it gets a little bit quieter. So managed to do that. But then at the end of that, competing in Grindelwald in the Europeans, and then the Worlds in Winnipeg, in Canada. Just after that, my uncle, he had come back from something, and he sort of not been feeling well for a while, and went to the doctor, and the doctor said, David, I'm going to put you on this treadmill. I'll give you one of these oxygen masks, and we'll plug you up to a few instruments, and let's take a run, because he said it just felt like he had a virus or something that he couldn't shift. And he was on the thing for about 30 seconds, and the doctor said, David, just come with me, sit down, lie down, in fact, lie down. He said, oh, what's wrong, Doc? He says, I'm just phoning an ambulance. He said, I think you've been working far too hard, and his fast-paced lifestyle is catching up. And he was through to Aberdeen Royal Infirmary to get a triple heart bypass the very next morning. So taken straight to hospital there and then. But that was great, because then David, not only did he go on to become president of the Benevolence Society for the Licensed Trade, as part of that, he then, as part of his recuperation, he went and cycled around every distillery in the whole of Speyside, all 44 at the time, collecting a sample from each one, and created a blend, which was then auctioned at the massive Ben dinner, as it's called, over 1,000 people, biggest sit-down dinner there ever was, that there was at the time in Scotland. And of course, under his tenure as president, even though he'd just come through this, it raised the whole everything he did helped raise a fortune for obviously the charity and the good causes it's associated with, and that was really inspiring to those who knew David, and then as David as we went through the rest of the 2000s, David was coming up to the point of retirement in 2000, or not retirement, stepping back from an operational role in the business to a more sort of non-executive type role in 2012. And so I, by this point, I'd come into the office to support David, because obviously he couldn't do as much. The business was growing massively as well. That was the thing. In the time from when I started under David, the UK, and Michael was doing with the support of the rest of his team and Ian as well, and business in the UK doubled in the first 2.5 years, and then doubled again by 2005, and then doubled again by 2010. So it was incredible growth. So he needed the support to do national accounts, all the buying, because it was increasing significantly. And so I came in and supported more of that aspect. And of course, that helped me see and develop my skills in a much wider area of the business. And then became UK sales director in 2010. And David became joint managing director with Michael. And then he stepped down, Michael carried on. Unfortunately, that was 2012 was the year poor David contracted prostate cancer. And one thing or another, in 2015, he passed away. So, but David's in the Whisky Magazine's Hall of Fame. Both Michael and David are in the Hall of Fame. So, and that's full of absolute legends. If you ever get to see Rothes Glen, the house that Damien Riley Smith's spent a lot of love and care and attention and invested in, it's a stunning venue to stay. And Sir Charles Doig Designs just on the way to Rothes here. Stunning place now. What a great job he's done. And he's got a room in there, and it's a tasting room, but it's surrounded by the portraits of everybody in the Hall of Fame. It's absolutely brilliant.
Yeah, fantastic.
Names, faces on that wall.
Yeah. Absolutely. You're talking a lot about the history and wishing you had a time machine you could go back and spend a bit of time with some of these guys and get to ask questions and wonder what it was like. I mean, I going by the website, and I'm aware that there are records that you keep from a historical point of view. Have you ever produced a book, a history of the book of the company, or is that something that's likely to happen at some point?
It's a great question. We haven't. We have got some amazing records. I think Gordon MacPhail, because it's a family business, is really an amazing snapshot of the evolution of the whiskey industry. Really, because and Glenfiddich and William Grant would be exactly the same, because how it was, distilleries were plants making spirit. It was put in casks and sold relatively quickly. It was like the cash flow cycle, and then how brokers and blenders were the next step in the ladder. Blenders, obviously, the world, famously the quote about George Urquhart, by when he passed away, Michael Jackson, the whiskey writer, said, if it wasn't for George Urquhart, we would not know single malt as we know it today, because he single-handedly kept the amber light of aged whiskey burning while the industry had their head turned to blends. And that was the way of it. So you can't, like so many things, we can't apply today's standards to the past. Why wasn't there aged single malts back in the 1900s, 1910s, 1920s? Because it was just a different world. The levels of production, and everything. There was so much change from the late 1700s all the way through the 18th century, and even through the 19th century, the 20th century rather. It's 1700s, 1800s, 1900s, and to today. Just the evolution. If you step back and then just even track the top trends, it's fascinating. We're talking today about this boom, as I was saying. We're up to almost 140 distilleries now, but aren't we in if you fast forward 50 years, are we going to look today at this moment in time like we look at the boom at the end of the 1890s.
Yeah.
You know, when all of a sudden dozens and dozens of distilleries were created, and then we had the Paterson crash, of course, famously, and then many of them stopped producing. You know, the fact that in the 1930s there was as few as 2 distilleries making whiskey at one point because of the effects of the Great Depression, and then the implications of prohibition and things like that. But you know, the Great Depression was the main reason, and then the surge in the mall opening back up again, only to be struck by the Second World War. But what was happening then? What was so special about the relationships that Gordon MacPhail happened to have? You know, then here's one that hopefully people have seen.
But it was the business ideas that John Urquhart, and also the getting a hold of raw spirit and managing it yourself. It was all these things that actually made the difference. And then because the business was in such a good state when these wars happened, Gordon MacPhail survived where other ones didn't. You know, they were able to actually survive these big events that happened. So it was the business.
We're multifaceted. You know, you know, John Urquhart, although when he came on board, he very much slipped under the wing of James Gordon, who was a small-time whiskey broker. But he had joined forces with John MacPhail. John MacPhail was a grocer, but together they had this eye to create a higher standard, a better quality level of grocers. And the result of that was, I suppose, a more premium, multifaceted offering with whiskey as one part. But when you look at the old pictures, like you see of the famous one you'll see in a lot of our publications, outside the front of the shop with the guy with the bowler hat and the bicycle, and then the people in their aprons and things. But if you read what's in the windows behind, it says in bigger letters, the biggest letters said wine merchant. But actually, what was important when you look back at that is that meant shipping casks of wine. And of course, one of the prominent wines back then was sherry. Ports, of course, Madeiras, other things. But sherry was really, really important. That was a very popular drink in Great Britain. And so that, in a way, there's something really subtle in that. That sits above the words blenders of Highland malt Highland malt whiskies. And then below that, it talks about ales and beers and things. So, but isn't that fascinating that was almost their hierarchy? But what was important was that created the raw material, i.e. casks, for us to then do the next bit. And what was really interesting was, and if you read, Dr. Nick Morgan's book, Along Stride, the one about the history of Johnny Walker. A great job with that. But you can follow it there as well, and it talks about how people, the nomenclature they were using, about describing their whiskies, rare Highland malt, old Highland malt. There were words to try and portray an image. This Victoriana over the time, this my heart's in the Highlands, my heart lies there, etc., etc. Burns poetry coming out, and so it's so fascinating that so for them to sell their product, they had to almost fit in with the style of the thing. They weren't advertising single malt Scotch whiskey. They were advertising, Highland, Highland malts and things like that. It's very, it's very subtle what they were actually saying. But I was asking my Uncle Ian, who did a lot of research back in his day, and when did we first do our sort of first distillery bottling? He said it was probably probably some point late in 1895, 1896, when we taken local whiskies and decided to bottle them with a distillery name on them and put them on the shelf, or had equivalent to a Jemmy John, these old glass jars with a tap at the front. We've got a couple in our archive that we'll hopefully bring to life. Exactly that, and people would have come and filled up their vessels with the whiskey, paid for it, etc., etc. So interesting, really interesting. But what I was going to touch on was, so let's get through to the end of the Second World War. You've got in the town of Keith, you've obviously got Strathmill, but you've now got what was known as Milton Distillery, which produced Strathisla, and it was a guy called J. Pomeroy owned it from 1946, and he refused to give anybody any fillings.
Yeah.
He saw that the government was allocating very small amounts of raw materials to the whiskey industry, which meant that this would be a really finite product. Therefore, he could, if he could get as much of it as he could, he would corner the market to a point, and therefore get a much higher price for his product. So that's what he did, and he stopped filling with all the usual people, of which Gordon MacPhail were probably front of the queue. And it's really interesting because that lasted until he got caught by, or he got prosecuted by Her Majesty's government for not paying his taxes. And a guy called Alex Phimster, who had been company secretary at the time, was appointed by the liquidators to run the business. He came up and had one look at the distillery manager and sacked him and made Alex Phimster managing director. And when asked why, he said the manager had seen too much of distillery life.
Slightly sizzled, perhaps.
And anyway, so the chap, so fillings started again because Alex Phimster knew John Urquhart and George Urquhart, so he started filling, and that year, so we filled, I think three times that year it was. So I've got the record of the casks and the vintages, how many filled in each section, because I was being asked by Johnny McCormick this story. I'm catching up with him tomorrow because he's writing a great article. So the whiskey I was going to show you was this unicorn, because that's what it is.
Yeah. So the Milton, yeah.
This is the Milton 1949. Now I call it a unicorn because unicorns are mystical beasts that did they ever exist or not? And that's the thing. No whiskey's ever been known as the Milton. But if you look at our whiskies, I've got another one here. So the naming structure on a private collection is carefully matured in our own casks with spirit entrusted to us from, this one is Dallas Dew Distillery 1971.
Oh yeah, nice.
Yeah. What a whiskey. Wow. Yeah. My vintage. But we couldn't say from Strathisla Distillery, because in 1949, and it's the oldest Strathisla, in 1949 the distillery wasn't called that. The spirit was. So the whiskey is Strathisla from the Milton Distillery.
Yeah.
And because we don't have any casks left anymore from 1950 or 51, and I say 51 because while the distillery was auctioned and James Barclay purchased it, that's a wonderful story about that auction, by the way. He purchased it on behalf of Seagram / Shivers Brothers on the 15th of April 1950. They didn't change the name until 51, and so that was the last cask remaining in the world of Milton. And because nobody had ever called it Milton, that becomes a one of a kind, one of one. Because technically it's 100% right. It's from the Milton Distillery. So
that is the only bottle with Milton.
Yeah.
On it ever.
Yeah. And if you look at some Strathislas, where are they?
Yeah.
A couple up here, 53 and 54 there. And what's fascinating about those is we've got some bottlings from the 1940s that we've done, which very proudly say Strathisla Single Malt, which is absolutely right. And then on the label at the bottom, it's got the address of the distillery, and Strathisla Distillery, Keith,
Hampshire,
whatever it is, yeah. And but of course, technically that was right as of today. So if you had an issue, you wrote to that address, it would get there. But it wasn't correct from the time this whiskey was distilled.
Yeah.
But technically it was right because it was Strathisla. That was the name of the liquid. But so that's what makes this an unbelievable, such a rarity, such an absolute anomaly. It's a bit like the old Angel Share film and the cask they talk about in that.
The malt milk.
So this is like that. It's a total unicorn. It's all a bit fake, but this isn't. This is almost like a real life unicorn.
Yeah.
It brings it to life, and the story behind it is fascinating. And
did I see the seal was broken in that bottle you've got there?
And this is.
Oh,
Bad news though. I've just taken this from downstairs. We have this on display.
What happened? We got scratch and sniff.
This, unfortunately, the reason this is not in a glass in front of me is because this isn't actually. I'll put it in front of the camera. This was a dummy bottle that we created. It says at the back here, dummy, not for resale, for display purposes, because they're so finite that we didn't actually have one that we wanted to initially risk putting on. But if you've got any customers for it, just get in touch with the team, because it's only just gone on sale.
Clearly not Ed, because he's just said, for a few tens of thousands of pounds. I'm the same as you, Ed. I'm in love with the story. Maybe I won't be owning one. I can tell the story. But that's one of the best things about the stories, is that until you produce that bottle, most people in whiskey would not have known or understood about Milton Distillery. They wouldn't have really thought about that history. So now we've got a lot of people who are going to get to know that story as well, and I think that's a wonderful thing. Always a new story.
Milton Duff or something like that. But,
there's always a new old story that comes out every now and again, and we learn a bit more about the history.
It was really interesting, because actually the name of the distillery originally, when the George Taylor and another chap, Alexander, someone, rack my brains here, in 1786, it was called Milltown, 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 and then it was changed. I think it was probably in around about 1823. I think it was changed to Milton. So, and it was fascinating. But to understand the whole history of it, you need to understand it overlaps with the agricultural revolution, and obviously the industrial revolution, and how it's all progressed to where it is today. And why is it 40%? Why does it have to be aged for 3 years? All these things all have come about through political coincidence, consequence rather, and wars and everything have influenced the ultimate shape of today's industry. But it didn't happen at one point. It wasn't a eureka moment. It wasn't a bang. It was an evolution. So to understand, but the reason that we are where we are is because John, and ultimately really George and Ian, Michael, and David, and Rosemary took this stance of, well, actually, we are absolutely fascinated by and driven by the quality of the liquid. So as we allow different casks to mature longer than anybody else, we're doing so to find out what happens. And does it keep evolving and getting better and more mellow, more mature, more complex, more sophisticated? Or at what point doesn't it? Until you do that, you don't know. And so when you look at it, the reason we were the first to do a 70, 75, 80, etc., was because somebody had to be at the front of that curve. And you obviously, so leave it another day, to see what happened, another week, another month, another year, etc., etc. At what point was it, did it get to the point that actually this is no longer tasting like whiskey, or it's now just tasting off the sherry, or it's completely out of balance, or it's dry, or it's low strength, etc. Unless you do it, unless you go there, you don't know. That's the fascinating part, and that's what makes the Gordon MacPhail story so unique. Because they were the ones that, went against the industry, even though they were, George was being called eccentric to the point of mad, etc. He still said, no, but I believe in what I'm doing. I believe in matching it to oak and maturing it to the point that I believe it's at its best. And unless somebody does it,
but it wasn't just mad eccentric foresight. It was good business, good standards, hard work.
Hard work.
Yeah, and I think those are the things, and that's the reasons why the companies. That's why it survived, because there were, other companies. There were other wine merchants around that could have actually followed the same route and been as successful, but they fell by the wayside because, I guess, some of those ethics weren't quite as solid as you guys were.
But you notice though that the ones that were probably most likely would have been like John Grant and George Grant at Glenfarclas, and they would, because they were a family business and of lineage. Not so, whereas a lot of other business had changed and become part of bigger industry, bigger business. Therefore, the demands on the people and the liquid were very different. It would have been about, look, sales are going great. Let's fill more, or sales aren't going great. What are we doing? You know, oh, we'll have to make a cheaper blend, or we'll have to try and target this market here, and we'll need to create an entry product for that. And we'll need, you know, so it's using up our consuming stock, and or some would have just said, right, well, park it, and we'll just sell it off, but then you sell it off, or use it in blends to create older blends, etc. It's just fascinating because the pressures are very different, and none of it's wrong. It's just that's the circumstance at the time, and you have to remember that it's all about context. Nobody was doing anything wrong or bad. It just was different. It was different for people, and
the ability to have a long-term vision and to stick to that, I think, is the key thing as well, isn't it? I mean, I just think that the people who, so it's like all these people who make great estates and plant all these trees that they know they're never going to see, but you know, I think that's a fantastic thing to do. And I guess at the very early days of, you know, I wonder what the guys at the very beginning would have thought about the company now and where you're at.
Yeah. Would they, you know, could you imagine saying, so George, you know, having a dram one night with, so, you know, I called him, obviously, he was Papa and Peggy was Nana. Yeah. So Papa, do you know what we're bottling tomorrow? We're bottling that 1949, the one that you filled with Alex Fimister from when they reopened the distillery, and he sort of rack his brains, oh yeah. What are you calling it? You know, you call it. You know, we've got the agreement that we private collection from the whatever distillery, so it will have to be the Milton distillery. Oh, good point. I'm glad you're doing that, because they would have told the story to you. He said, so how old is it? 72 years old. My word, I never thought that would reach that age. You know, that would be the sort of tone. And when you read any of the message, you know, be it obviously Charlie McLean or Christopher Coates or Alice Lascelles and Becky Paskin and Blair Bowman's, he's tasted it. The comments about it are like the generations. Nobody can believe actually poise and balance and beauty of it as a liquid. You know. So,
what ABV did it hold? What did you bottle it at?
I'll just tell you because it's correct. 48.6.
So, yeah, for that age, that's quite high, isn't it, for a natural?
72, and it's 48.6. Yeah,
that's incredible.
Now, Russell, you mentioned Glencadam. It just almost show a contrast. Did you see we did one of this style, the upper version of Connoisseur's Choice?
Connoisseur's,
yeah. It was a 91 Glencadam, but the strength of it was only 41%. But because it's still been bottled at natural cask strength, it had the texture and the weight and the oils and everything, and it fully intact. And it's a whiskey I fell in love with. I had to use it at a tasting with Lord John Thurso, for something he was doing with the innkeepers, the worshipful company of innkeepers, who were up in the Highlands, and it was fantastic. And it was one that I hadn't been part of the panel for, but the team here said, "Look, Stephen," I said, I'm going to do this tasting. Some of these guys won't be whiskey experts as such, but so I need something in there." And it was a mixed audience as well. And so, look, I just need something in there that's probably just a little bit softer. And they said, "Oh, Stephen, you've just got to try this." Well, I tasted them all before people came in and made sure I was totally a fait with them. And I just instantly fell in love with it. Because yes, the softer strength meant you didn't need any water or anything, but it could take water. But wow, what a balance of flavor. It was just beautiful. Yeah. It would be like when you get given, silk as opposed to something else like velvet or whatever, or cashmere. It was more like silk. It was just so smooth and easy, but with a lovely element of complexity to it. And yeah, so if you've got a bottle in store, I would strongly recommend it to anybody. What a cracking dram.
I love Glencadam. I think Glencadam's awesome. Yeah.
We took in
was a 13-year-old.
Connoisseurs. We took in the Connoisseurs. We had two kind of at the same time.
Yeah,
we went for the other one, but
the thing with Glencadam is it's incredible at any ABV. We've got we've got a shop exclusive 60% that does not need water. I mean, it's happy to take it, but it's incredible. I've drunk lots of lower ABV whiskies that I've had to put water in because it's been too much. But it's 60%. That's like it's worryingly like juice. It's just incredible spirit. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember we were just talking about quality in casks and kind of timing and your determination to make sure things are right. When I had the privilege of going around the distillery, the factory with yourself, the warehouses, back in 2016, I think it was.
Yeah.
You gave me the sample. I think they were from the 50s of Glengrant and Macallan or Speymalt, and the Speymalt was probably one of the worst whiskies I've ever tried. And this was one that you didn't bottle. It was just that really okay petrol.
Yeah.
And it was like, oh my God, like, we didn't bottle that because it didn't meet the standards. And nowadays, there's so many people who think we've got a 1952, 1954 from Macallan Distillery. Let's bottle that and not really care what the liquid was like, because the chances are your bottling that is going to be tens of thousands of pounds, and nobody's going to open it. It's just going to sit on a shelf somewhere. Yeah. But to have that, incidentally, the Glengrant that we had was absolutely amazing, incredible. Similar age, similar cask, it just held that flavour so well. Yeah. But it's good that, just to kind of back up that ethos that you guys are, no matter how much money we can make from it, if it's not quality, it's not going in a bottle. And, to stand fast on that is an incredible business kind of acumen to go forward with.
It's about integrity.
Yeah.
We've all been there, and what's vital is you earn trust, and with trust you have to behave with integrity to earn trust, and so that's vital. So if you notice, all the releases we do, we give them out to samples to the likes yourselves, to journalists, proper whiskey journalists, and sometimes some of the experienced bloggers, and what comes of that is genuine independent review, and funnily enough, we don't tend to get many bad reviews or any really, because we're deliberately not putting we're not putting something that we don't believe with or would buy ourselves into a bottle. If it's not good enough, it's not good enough.
Yeah.
And we've always, and because again the values that have been instilled in us, it's about being exceptional. It's about being respectful. Now we've got to be respectful to, one, the people of our own business, but two, the people that we're representing. We're putting a name on the label, because we have been entrusted by this spirit by another distillery. So if we're going to put Glencadam's name on it, and today obviously people will see us as as the owners of that, or the wonderful Hillman family, and we're carrying an expectation about their product. You love it, Russell. It would be so disappointing if you picked up a bottle and went, "Oh, that's not really very good, is it?"
Absolutely,
So it's really, really important for us. If it doesn't matter what it is, that we do right by the whiskey, and we that's a term we use a lot in the business. We have to do right by the whiskey, because by doing right by the whiskey means we're doing right by the people that made the whiskey. Now that could be the owners, or it could be the actual stillman doing it. And that's so important, because otherwise we lose that trust and our integrity fails. So
and you're right. Is that from a selling point of view, from working in the shop point of view, or even just somebody who likes whiskey, trying to encourage anybody else to drink something, or if somebody asks you what would you actually try, you want people to kind of then trust your opinion. And the great thing about Gordon MacPhail is I can say to somebody, try anything, because it will be good quality. And that, from a selling point of view, that really helps. If somebody's really not sure what they're going to buy, then it's a case of, well, this will definitely be good. You might be gambling a little bit with something else in terms of flavour. It's all good, but this is definitely good. And I think I like that when it comes to.
I think as well, there's that backup that it might not be to their taste, but you've got the quality assurance as it's still good quality. You know, it's like, oh well, maybe sherry cask isn't for me, or maybe peaty isn't for me, but I understand that this is good whiskies. A peaty whiskey fan will like it. It's not like they're coming back saying there's an off note here, or there's something I didn't like about it. It's more that, I mean, the quality is always there, and you'd expect that, you understand that, then you'll have favourites. But even if it's not to your taste, you can still appreciate what's in the bottle. You still know that this is good stuff, but maybe not. You know what I mean? It's you guys have got every base covered, and budget as well, from the Milton to the Discovery and everything in between.
Yeah,
the Gordon MacPhail in the shop, in any good whiskey shop, can say, yeah, we've got a Gordon MacPhail for you.
and that whole value equation came very much, again, part of the ethos. So it's being respectful. You want to give somebody, the original advert in 1895 said, we quote this internally, that almost, watch you're not going back that way. Well, thank you very much, Philip, by the way, for that comment. But what's interesting is it said the language was great. It said people favouring us with their patronage may depend on getting a superior product at a popular price. So, i.e., something better, but at a price that was still fair and popular. So it was about value for money. Yeah. And today, let's take the Milton. Everybody was, a lot of people, £50,000 for that. But read what people have said. Not only is it a wonderful whiskey, you are drinking absolute history. It's the only one. It can't ever be replaced. If you drop it, you can't come back and ever get another one. Well, I've got a great story to say about that. But and I think it involves 1949.
Oh dear.
No, 39. It was 1939. Anyway, long story, but but actually, when you then put together that value chain, and if that happened to have an own label, an OB bottling, a distillery owned bottling, so for example, the sorts of people that may have something upwards of that age, well, you know what you're going to be paying, and it's going to be way ahead of that. But so therefore, the fact that it is so unique, and you could argue, how did you? Everybody asks us, how do you price something? So hard at that when you are dealing with a finite product that is one cask. That's all it is. There's 180 bottles out, but it's it goes to the market. It's oversubscribed, and you're thinking, what is it? And one of the problems I think we faced a lot of the time, and probably due to this day, is a lot of people will go into the secondary market, look at auction houses, and see Glengrants from the 50s, maybe 60s, maybe 40s, and they're not that much money compared with the prices of that product would command today if it was bottled today. But actually, they're unbelievable whiskies, and I think there's I would genuinely say there's a massive amount of bargains in that, some of that old stuff, and old Glen Gordons and Glenavons and things like that, just unbelievable. But the problem was, back then, the reason they weren't right, because the market wasn't mature enough, it wasn't understanding enough to appreciate what that was, and because it was so rare, you put the price out. Oh, I'm not going to buy that. It's ridiculous, So the evolution, and I tell the story about when the year David started in 1972. His brother Ian had started in 67, and in 2012 when we had a sort of retirement dinner for David, we pulled out a price list, and we had that year, David, one of the first products David started selling in the price list was bottling that we had done on Macallan bottling, because we're licensed bottlers. It was 1937 Macallan, aged 35 years old. Now, 72 had already gone through pounds and pence becoming a thing, shillings and halfpennies and crowns all dropping off, of course, and we became decimalised. And a bottle of blended whiskey was about £1.50 to £2. Deluxe blends were £2.50, £2 to £2.50 maybe. Bottle of malt was £2.50 to £3. There was not many malts in the market at all, really. I think it was 8 or 9, I think, in our list. So how much was a bottle of 35-year-old Macallan? Do you have any idea?
£7? Don't know.
I was going to say fiver.
I would give you both change.
Oh, really? Wow.
£4.54.
Wow.
So, and just remarkable, but why? Because the market didn't get it, didn't understand it. The consumer drinking it wasn't willing to, wasn't prepared to pay for that. They didn't, because it was a novelty, and because of the age, it was, goodness, will that be any good? Will it be drinkable? You know, it just didn't.
We have the same issue now with grain whiskey, isn't it? You can get 40-year-old grain whiskies for 30 quid, 40 quid. You know, put malt on that, and it's, you know, triple the price instantly. You know, if not more.
Yeah. So let me tell you a story. And so, as you know, based here in our corner of Murray, if you go 6 miles that direction, you'll come to RAF Lossiemouth, formerly naval base, and became an Air Force base. First founded in 1939, I think it was. And if you go just slightly that direction, and it's in the direction, of course, of Fintorn, Forest Fintorn, you come to the little village of Kinloss, another Air Force base, also founded about the same time, 1939. So it was one of their anniversaries, and it might be in 2009, and we hosted the senior echelons, because we did a lot with them, and we sponsored a lot of their support, their charities, and a lot of the activities they were doing in the community, and also supplied them goods when they went overseas. And so we did a dinner, and we had everybody mixed up, but the senior team, station commander, and all the senior officers from Kinloss and Lossiemouth came to this dinner, and we presented each of them a unique bottle of whiskies that contained whiskey in it from 1939. So it was a vatting, but with whiskey from 39, because we didn't have a huge amount of it. 39 was a particularly lean year, as we, of course, approached the war, you see. So, but we had these amazing bottles, and about 3 months later, we got a phone call from this person at one of the bases saying, "We just phoning up. We've got this bottle sitting here. Well, we had this bottle sitting here. It's possible to get another one." And we said, "Oh yeah, that one. We did it in a lovely blue box, you know, RAF blue type thing." Yeah, no, unfortunately we done. It was a one-off. Would anybody notice if, you know, we had something else in it? I said, 1939, and, you know, put together as a thing to celebrate the history and the key years of the base, etc. For a woman, you could almost hear the crying, or the guy, I can't remember, the guy crying at the end of the phone. He says, "You won't believe this. Somebody dropped it." So there's now only one, and I think it's at RAF Lossiemouth as opposed to the only one that left in history. So, yeah, it must have been the 70th anniversary. It would have been the 70th anniversary of the base. That was amazing.
Oh, that's somebody who didn't have a job in the morning, eh?
So we dropped it and broken.
Yeah. Ian says we could put cold tea in it. Yeah. This is
Oh God. Oh God. Oh God. I guess we did say we'd have a little look at 9 o'clock, and I guess we're approaching that time just now. I mean, we could talk all night.
Yeah.
But I mean,
any of your customers have questions I was going to ask you? You getting?
I want to jump back to a couple of questions that came in when you're kind of telling your story, and we've touched a couple of it, but so Phil Dixon asked, and he mentions Milton Distillery. He was wondering, so these two questions kind of tie in together. He was wondering if you're close, or if you have any liquid from any of the new distilleries, kind of Rassay, Ardnamurchan, these kind of guys. And Ian's also asking about the proposed American single malt category, which is coming into, or proposed. Is that an opportunity for Gordon MacPhail, because they've left out the need for the liquid to be bottled in whiskey in America? So is that an opportunity for maybe the market? And I don't know, you're purely Scottish whiskey, isn't it? You don't do.
Yeah, we've only ever done that, and to be honest, it's something that again we've considered, we've looked at, and but with I suppose you could argue we've stuck to our knitting. But it's a fair question, because what is our core skill set? And it's in the maturation, and today the distillation as well. But the maturation of spirit is our core set. So the answer to the first part of the question is we have from some in your distilleries, but the world's different. In the past, we were able to get a lot of fillings because we go way back, because the output of the distillery, the core output of the distillery, wasn't their single malt. In fact, from almost everybody, it would have been the secondary part of it. So, so again, you could argue we had very much sort of clear water. Most of these places gave us the right to be the licensed bottler of their whiskey.
And there was about three Macallan. You were the official bottlers for a lot of these whiskies for a period of time.
I think there's 27 whiskies, or 28 whiskies that we had effectively distillery labels for. Which is so the ones we'd either been granted license permission to use. So be it a Clynelish and the old Ainsley and Hebron label, remember, the yellow and brown one, or
Glentalkers and
Duff, Glenburdy, you name it, and Mortlake, Linkwoods, Longmorns, etc., etc. 27, 28 over the history of the company, and so as therefore, and then almost, we created a relationship that was trusted, and so we managed to carry on. And then, of course, we coexisted, and then some things changed. For example, like if you take the Pulteney and Blether label, obviously in time they came out with their single malts, so therefore there's two in the market. So who's the right one, who's the wrong one? So actually, it made sense for us to move that to into the MacPhail's collection label, and now it just falls under Connoisseur's Choice, because then it doesn't confuse. And that's it's never been our intent to say that ours is a de facto expression or anything. It's never ours. Ours is spirit from that distillery, entrusted to us and matured. And we always want to never compete, but always be there as a way to complement what the distillery is doing, because it'll inevitably be maybe something a little bit different, be it our vintages versus an age statement, be it our cask styles versus what their prominence cask style is, or our variety, our AA grade aging versus Glen Grant, the younger profile stock that was their core, versus our core, which was the age profile. So it was always there to always live in harmony. But with new people, they're going out to build their brand. So obviously what they don't want to do is have somebody else necessarily coming out and being able to
confusing their message.
But again, that today. Yeah. But you didn't know that because it wasn't happening back then.
Yeah.
So it's very different. So that's why the world today is different. That's why people, if you are buying spirit, you're buying it under a secondary name, which teaspooned or whatever it will be, just because actually they want to build their brand, and so when people purchase it, they know what they're getting, they understand the values of that product, etc. So that's why it's a very different world. And those who are doing it, as I say, will be doing it under no doubt a secondary name. That would be the sensible thing to do in this day and age. But they'll be doing it for cash flow purposes, of course, rather than any other purpose. In the past it would have been not because we're buying new. We've always bought new spirit. It would actually been just to help, get your unit price down because you're making more, And to be honest, what we were always filling was actually small beer anyway. We were always every year we'd fill, but we'd fill small amounts from a lot of distilleries. And sometimes you'd look at your inventory, go, actually, we're needing to do this project, new roof in the warehouse, or build a new warehouse, or this is needing to happen. In which case, actually, our portfolio for that distillery is looking really healthy. So let's not fill that this year, use the money for that, or we'll fill more with that distillery because we're selling more of that, so we need to replenish more stocks of that. So again, it's all about context, and you've got to know what all the pressures and what the world was like at the time when the decision was made. So
yeah.
Good question, though. Great question.
It's interesting in just how the whole thing has evolved, and I love Russell's idea of doing a history of Gordon MacPhail, because it would certainly just tie in with the history of whiskey.
it covers everything. It absolutely covers everything, and just ties it all in, and it pulls all the other. One of the questions I had for you tonight was how you feel about the growth of all the other independents, because there's so many of them sprouting up just now. So some of them doing some marvelous stuff, but I mean, it's all on the coattails of you guys, I guess, at the end of the day.
Do you know what? It's making the category really vibrant, and I think there's probably about 3 or 4 different types of independent bottler. So there's the people that will purchase a mature cask of whiskey and bottle it. It might be, they might have what we hear, and I don't know if it's yourself, but a lot of people have very limited pickings, I think a lot of people, are they selling the best whiskey they can to people? No, of course not. If they've got a really good one, they'll keep it for themselves. So, but let's be honest, there's not a lot of terrible whiskey out there. It's the world's always said there's good whiskey and better whiskey. So that's their model. So they'll buy it and sell it, and no doubt that will give them a return, and then they'll maybe invest that return. Then you get people who will add value to a product. So they'll buy a cask, and they'll either age it for longer, or they'll rack it into a different style of cask, and they'll fill it with it would be maybe additional sherry or a port or wine or whatever it is, rum, and so they'll add some form of value to it, or age, and they'll sell that. And then you'll get people who may buy the spirit at a younger age, and therefore they'll have the benefit of aging it for longer. And they're all playing in the open market, effectively, aren't they? Or they've had to build relationships in the modern world. We've obviously come from a position where we're 127 years old, so we've been building these relationships, and the last is the independent bottler that picks his own casks, has them filled with new make spirit, and completely owns the relationship between spirit and oak. It's not one that's been presented to them by somebody else. It's one that they have chosen to make, and make that introduction to that particular style of oak, be it a refill, first fill, butt, barrel, hoggy, wine, port, whatever. That's been in their power to make that decision. And as far as I'm aware, over the history, there's really only been one company that's done that, and that's Gordon and MacPhail. Today, I think there's some people that are filling some new spirit. The other people are procuring for them, or if they're procuring, I'm not sure. But I do know of a few people that are doing that. So we've really been in this little area all by ourselves, but because you start with the end in mind and the quality that you're trying to progress to in mind, that's why the cask selection is so important. So, and I'm not decrying any other way, I'm just explaining that there's a difference. And it's about the amount of control that you want to exercise. So, and what Gordon MacPhail has always done is work in partnership, always complement, never compete, and do it because you're part of. We see ourselves very much as part of the industry, and to contribute to the evolution of that industry, and that's with the purchase of Ben Romick, we can see coming down the line that fillings weren't going to necessarily be there forever, because the world of malt whiskey was growing incredibly quickly and is becoming much more dynamic, and we could see the challenges. And likewise, why we've built the cairn it's in a way to very much, it's the next stage, it's the legacy, it's the progression of the longevity of Gordon and MacPhail, and to in some way future-proof it to the best we can.
I guess what some of the other companies are doing as well. I mean, you've got Elixir building their distillery on Islay and then buying Tormore. You've got Adelphi building Ardnamurchan, the Signatory buying Edredar and stuff like that. So I guess the kind of the bigger companies who've maybe got the clout to maybe go and do something like that have got the ability to survive that way. You wonder what the future is for some of the smaller independents that are relying on brokers and agents to get spirit, because it's going to be harder and harder for them to get liquid as time goes on, I guess.
It's more and more expensive because people are buying casks now for inheritance or for resale. They're not buying it to bottle. That drives all the prices up for guys who are wanting to buy it to put in a bottle.
And people, I'm aware of a couple of distilleries who are offering you make spirit, and or spirit, whether in a cask or not. And the prices are massive. It's so just eye-watering. For a bulk litre of spirit, it's just incredible.
We were talking to somebody the other day that bought some casks of Ben Nevis for about £3,000 not that long ago, and now they're going for 12 grand. And they're like, why would I bottle that when I can sell it for 4 times profit?
And not have the hassle of having to design, bottle, pay duty,
Would it be something that Gordon MacPhail would ever consider? I know, there's guys like Adelphi have their Dancing Man blend, the Private Stock blend. Berry Brothers do their classic kind of range blend. Is that something that's ever kind of entered the fray with Gordon MacPhail to do a core bottle, a Gordon MacPhail blend that would sit on the shelf consistently?
We used to do a blended Scotch. The main one was Glen Calder. We did a vatted malt called Avonside, which seems to go for quite a high prices when they now and again crop up at secondary market, because it was sensational. But I think that, how would I put it? I think we had the ability to, with all the stock we had, to be able to use it as named stock. And therefore we didn't necessarily, and also we were known as the single malt specialists. So creating a blend, in a way, consumed a lot of amazing whiskey, but we could use.
And it goes against what you started doing in the first place, doesn't it?
Well, yeah, but we did. While we were right at the start, we did a blend, and we've done a blend right up, and I think we still have some bottles of it. But yeah, it became, that wasn't what we were known for. So actually, let's again stick to our knitting. This is what we're known for. Yeah. Here you go. And of course, it's proven to be outstanding. A decision, but as I say, the benefit we have is all the stock we've got, we can use as named stock. So, but if you've maybe had to purchase casks that have been teaspoon makes and everything, you might have a very much more limited option of what you can do. You might not have the right to, you might own the cask but not have the right to use the name of that distillery on the label. So therefore, what you're going to do, you're going to either do a flavor driven malt or vatted malt, or you're going to use it for blending. So
yeah, it was just with the you having 2 distilleries. That's why I thought you could have a core.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah,
Cairn Romic blend. Yeah.
Oh, you'll see something.
I'm leaving a job. No, I'm not leaving a job. I'll leave
related to the cairn. That will. Again, while it's not a blend, it's something that points a direction to the future in terms of flavour, etc. But you'll see all that in time.
You said at the start, one of the things that you say at the start of all your tastings is there's no such thing as a daft question, so I'm going to ask this because it feels like a daft question. But, Master of Malt produced, in social media today, they kind of produced a kind of comment about the fact that rum is now officially overtaken whiskey in sales, I guess, worldwide. I can't remember what the figures were. And lots of independent bottlers these days are actually producing a rum that they're doing things with. Is that something that the company would think about, or is that just a ridiculous idea?
I don't think it's ridiculous per se. But if you just look at it, what we did with Red Door Gin, we had the ability to take something under our own control completely and do that. And the irony is that those who know the company well would remember we used to bottle rums. And so we had things like Long Jamaican rum, we had a Demerara rum, and for decades and decades. Oh, some of you, again, talking of the archive and some of the documents we've got these books that are, it's like the A to Z of distilleries with all the fillings through a decade or whatever. And then it comes to the end and it's got all the casks that we had of rums, of brandy, of cognac and everything like that we'd shipped for bottling in Scotland. But stuff that we're still exchanging in the 50s and 60s, buying rums and 70s, So, because I think up until recently, we very much had like 1941 Long Pond Jamaican rum, and which was highly aged, beautiful stuff.
Yeah.
But there was a number of rums actually we were doing, because I remember selling them when I was started in 2000, 2001, 2003.
Yeah.
So that's not
it's just a new craze.
There's
a lot of people producing a rum. They're taking it and they're maturing it into whiskey casks, and it's a very interesting kind of thing.
Yeah, it is.
I also want to just ask a little bit about yourself. So outside of whiskey, what do you do for fun? What do you do to relax? Do you get any time at all outside whiskey, I suppose?
Do you know what? No, it's twofold to that question. One, it's great when it's your passion, it's, as you can tell, I enjoy people's company, but I love sport. Myself and a group of similar age people and older, we'll play in what we call the Welfare League cricket, which is 7-a-side, like T20, but it's a bit of fun. It's one evening a week. It lasts about an hour and a half. You never see any of us running too fast because hamstrings are likely to go twang. Play golf and play a lot of sport with my family and encourage them. It's about that work-life balance thing, but for kids, it's about encouraging sport and that activity be a really healthy part of your life. So the whole family, we all swing a golf club, we all swing tennis rackets, and if it's not, it's badminton. We cycle, and we'll cycle to the tennis club to play, things like that. And we're in Elgin, remember, so we're not talking about posh tennis clubs, and it's the Blaze pit on Duff Avenue, the Blaze courts, or the courts at Cooper Park, because I was brought up by a father who's worked hard and enjoyed sport, and we got to know a huge amount of people through sport, and family, friends all along the northeast and further afield. I had the benefit of being young, being taken abroad to compete at curling in Denmark, and then with at school level, and then after that at junior level, managed to play in places like Switzerland and all the rest of it. Met with Janice, my wife, through curling. And today, myself and a group, we still go and are competitive. Even though we're seniors age, which is 50 plus, we go and compete in tournaments certainly around Europe, and now and again, the guys have made it across to North America, to Canada or the US. And so curling, we love curling. Play an active role though in the development of the sport in the Northeast. So I've been president, just the outgoing president of Murray Province. But again, the kids all go to Scouts, so I sit in the committee of the local Second Elgin Scout group. Again, just putting back, it's really important as a part of our values as a family, as a business, a sense of community. Yeah. And I don't mind sitting on a Zoom call or in a committee, in a committee, if I'm going to make a difference, if I can add value to it. If I'm just sitting there just because I think it's cool and the right thing to do, if I'm not contributing, it's
making a difference. Yeah, absolutely.
So playing that active role in that, as I say, but sport in general. If I love football. My daughter is football crazy. She's 15, going on 16, and going on 25. And her dream to do a soccer scholarship. She'll
have been delighted with the Euros recently. It's been good for the whole country.
Just brilliant. Absolutely brilliant. Yeah. Just the sheer exposure for high quality sport, women's sport, and we're seeing it in the Commonwealth Games. Just that doesn't matter what you are. You're a human being. It could be part with a disability or able-bodied, male, female, whatever. It doesn't matter. The quality of sport we've been treated to for a number of years now has been incredible, and it's just an inspiration. And my heart.
Eilish McColgan's run last night, to me looked like. I mean, I've never seen anyone run with such a heart.
Yeah,
you kind of looked at it and thought there wasn't. It ended up with probably a lack of technique, but an absolute massive
She
amount.
was sort of almost running a bit.
It was a massive amount of heart.
There was another 10 meters to go. She would have actually.
Just, I mean, about 300 meters, her face looking in absolute agony. The heart that she put into that last lap was incredible.
Yeah.
And that was for
who wasn't on this call tonight? Who wasn't shouting at the telly? And just cheering her on. Yeah. And she said it herself. If it wasn't, the atmosphere almost felt like it was fueling her. The people, the cheering for her, just felt like it was giving her that extra yard ahead of the opposition. And a game's record. And the two people that she beat, even the girl who was limping towards the end, they were both season's best for those people. Yeah. So that shows the quality of athlete. But as you say, total, that last 200-300 meters, you thought she had blown it a wee bit when she was trying to run round the outside on the bend. You think, actually, you're better hanging on there and see what reserves you've got. You can go down the stage to your equal, not having to run further than her.
I think being on the outside when they came to lap that last runner, that helped her because the first place at the time, I think Bushy Kenyon, had to kind of adjust to come out, and Ailish was already on that.
But she nailed her, and you could almost imagine that how she felt physically. She probably felt completely numb, unable to actually feel what she was physically feeling because it was just probably one of these almost like a kind of. They talk about in a cycling parlance. Some of the old cyclists, Graham, Robert Miller and the likes used to talk about that phase they used to get to at the top of a mountain when they still had about 100 meters to go to the line, when they'd no feeling whatsoever. They were almost at the point of unconsciousness because the effort was solid. And you can imagine that she was probably in that state as well. Just, I mean, she ran right through the line as well. She didn't. It was just fantastic. Yeah, wonderful.
It was brilliant. It's a moment of great sort of Scottish sporting history or British sporting history. And
wonderful for girls in sport. I think that's the big thing because girls don't get enough opportunities sometimes. I think.
My daughter goes to Inverness to train every Tuesday and Thursday. So she's there tonight, so she's getting a lift back and she'll need picked up from her friends. There's two of them go through, but they're playing for Inverness Cali Thistle at the age of 15, 16 now, and playing under 18, so their quality is great. And but we go along and watch them playing everybody from Stonehaven to Donside and Afford to Aberdeen, Grampian, and it's just the product's actually really good, and the standards high, but just it's brilliant to see everybody competing so passionately and with skill at actually quite a young age. I definitely miles better than I was.
It's good positive coaching, and I agree. A friend of mine's daughter used to play for Aberdeen Lads Club, and I used to go and watch when she was playing in Inverurie. When I stayed in Inverurie, I would go across and stand with him and watch the game. And it was the quality of coaching. I mean, the passion was there because the girls wanted, but it was the coaching that made a difference. And I thought, wow, I was not coached like that when I was at school. Yeah. We were just told to go out and chase the ball basically, and that was the difference.
I remember I was walking the dog past the Inverurie's sports centre, and there was kids playing. I don't know what age group they were. They were probably around about 10 years old anyway. And there was this one kid. They were doing passing drills, and one kid started doing flicks, and kind of chipped it up and passed it back and kind of backheeled it and things. And the coach shouted at him, "Oi, Jimmy, none of that fancy shite. Just pass the ball."
Nobody said that to Pelé in the back streets of Brazil, did they? So that's the problem. I think traditionally you'd argue that it feels like the way people in Scotland were trained was almost they had the flair trained out of them. Yeah. Actually, you could just allow that to develop and become much more natural and build their confidence. Yeah. Then you saw some of the stuff that Brazilians would do, the flick over the defender and the complete dummy and goes through their legs and before can't even turn because his legs have gone that way and he's fallen over, because the guys they're allowed to do that. They get the permissions granted to do that and they're encouraged, and so it develops their skills. And it's just look at Messi. He understands how a ball works, the physics of the ball, the spin and everything, and also the biomechanics of the human body. So he can go and make people do things that allows him to do what he needs to do.
Yeah.
Ronaldo and people like that. Same.
You talk about Pelé. I still to this day, I'm gutted. The goal that never actually was when he dummied the goalie clean through. Was that against Uruguay, 1970, and then he missed. The ball went wide, I think, and it was such a shame because that would have been one of the best goals ever. It's incredible.
Yeah.
I mean, with Scott, we get guys like that. Somebody like James McFadden or something. It's who has just got that natural ability to entertain. There's so much pressure on it. It's like, oh, he's the maverick. He's the savior of Scottish football. And you're like, come on, guys, just lay off. Just let the boy play football. He was like 21, and everyone's thinking he's.
Those were some kind of good years when he was in the Scottish team. That was when Walter Smith was the manager, wasn't it? And we were the potential to actually do something.
We beat France. Remember that wonder goal he scored against?
Yeah, I was there. I was in the Park the Princess at the time. Oh.
There's the one he scored against Ukraine that got me though when he kind of went through from the halfway line, and there was just no doubt he was going to score. Yeah. And up to that point, you were always worried about a Scottish player being on the ball, let alone you just thought, this is a goal all the way here. Like,
that's what he famously said about the in the '82 World Cup against Brazil. Remember in Spain when he fired a goal poke from the outside the box. And nobody congratulated with him. They just went, "Oh no, David, you've just made them angry." We got thrashed for one.
Exactly. The same thing happened to me when I was playing amateur football. We played for the hospital team at Cornhill. We were 2-0 up against Kemney in the Scottish Cup. Kemney were first division, and we were 7th division. And we all just kind of went, "What are we doing?" Lost 6-2. just made them angry. Yeah.
Brilliant. So what about you guys? What do you do when you're not selling whiskey? Or telling people?
I think that's all we do these days, but I used to cycle as well, Stephen. I was a reasonably competitive cyclist with Deeside Thistle. I used to enjoy the time trials and stuff like that, but I've been off the bike for about 4 or 5 years, so I need to get back on. Love cycling. I stay in Aberharder now, and the roads around about here are brilliant, so I've got no excuse not to be cycling again. So I've got to get back on the bike. My bikes are in the shed. I got some lovely Campagnola gear put onto my carbon bike last year, and I've never been out in it. It was my little wee retirement present, so I've got to go and do it. Yeah, I know, scandalous that it's never turned a pedal.
Oh, you need to. You need to. I'm just purely recreational cyclist. I don't compete or anything.
So you were never at the leg shaving stage, Stephen?
No. The only reason you needed to shave my legs was because you needed to put a plaster on because I'd fallen off.
Well, I did used to shave my legs, and I did explain to Mike the other day why amateur cyclists shave their legs. So the reason that professionals shave their legs because clearly they get a massage twice a day, and also there's a hygiene thing because they regularly come off in big crashes and what have you. So the only reason that amateurs shave their legs is because professionals shave their legs. And that's it. That is it. There is no benefit to it whatsoever. It's all about the look.
It's not about wind drag then and resistance.
Nothing. No, it's about the look and looking pro. That's it.
I thought it was about getting the lycra on. It went on smoother without the rub of the friction of the hair. No.
There's a great book called The Rules. I'm trying to think of the guy's name. It's called the Velominati. And it's all about the rules, and these are the rules of cycling. And one of them is it's about the look. You've got to look pro.
So what was all these anagrams that came out in Mammal and things like that?
Yeah, Mammal was middle-aged men in lycra. Yeah.
As Tobias say, they get back in the saddle, Russell. You need to. Tony and I got our bikes done up, fixed during lockdown, and with the intention of cycling to work every day because we're only a 10-minute walk from the shop, and we both did it, and then I'm not sure what happened, but we don't do it anymore. The bikes are back in the shed, and it's something we need to do.
I was happily doing 100-mile rides. I was 200 miles a week, so I've got to do it again. I've lost all conditions. So, but yeah. You need to earn your whiskey. That's the thing. I'm not actually earning my whiskeys now.
That's I completely agree. One thing I did manage to do during lockdown is I can't remember why. It was when Joe Wicks started off, and I said, do you know what? I'm going to get out of bed and do that. But I would get out of bed early, and everybody would in the house would. Good idea, Ian. Mike and Russell tandem around Speyside. Love it.
I'm definitely the front. Mike's not driving.
Also, you don't want your face that close.
It'd be a bit twist to the hairy bikers, wouldn't it? Sorry, Stephen, you were saying.
God, what were we saying? I got distracted by the thought of you two in a tandem.
You were talking about Joe Wicks. It was Joe Wicks.
So what would happen is, I would be up earlier than his because he was starting, I think, at 9, but I would be up way earlier than that. So I would go and do it. I would do the Monday on the Tuesday on the Wednesday and Thursday on the Friday, and then do the Friday on the Monday. And I would do that, and I'd do something, do something else at the weekend. And what a difference it made. And I just conditioned myself. But then something happened at the start of this year to my shoulder. So I did it for 2 years, and it was in pretty good shape. And but I got my third booster jab in my shoulder, and it did something to my arm. And it ended up, I don't know why, if I move my arm certain ways, it's fine. I can swing a golf club and I can sweep at curling. But what I can't do is I can't really lift it up. It's just agony. I don't know what it is. There's a point about here and here that it just brings a tear to my eye. And I can't figure out what it is. So I went to the doctor, and so I'm going to need to go and get physio and get it fixed, because it's something, and it's like on holiday lifting a backpack on, and just the angle you put it on. It was just, I was trying to do it with this arm. Yeah. And getting it off was even sorer. So you would undo the buckle, and then you would sort of shrug it up, and then shake it down and let it fall off, and then use your hand to take it off, because I couldn't get my hand up like that.
Are you left-handed?
I'm right-handed. So as a result, you'd fire it on your left shoulder, so your right hand was free. So
I find sometimes I play darts, and when I lift up, I feel
darts injuries now, eh?
Darts injuries, yeah. I can feel it now. There's a click there, just from, and I feel it if I play darts for a while, just click. I'm not saying I play darts well, but I throw darts. So darts. But yeah, there's that click, and I feel it gets really quite tight and sore. But it's in the joint. You feel it clicking rather than a muscle. For me,
Oh, this is purely muscular. Something's definitely gone a bit awry. It's even that sore, gee whiz. So Scotch made with that head. But yeah. So, but I think it's important. It's about, like anything in life, it's about work-life balance, and I think it's back to what we're talking about, children. I'm blessed with 4 children. That great kids. They've all got a passion for sport and competition. But at the same time, they do love, like, first day of our holiday, one of the 4 kids, the bottom 2 are twins. I was buy one get one free deal on the and my son Ben, first day of our holiday, he was running through a crowd to go and get something from his mother, because we were having a little bit of an issue getting tickets for the event we were going into. Long story, but anyway, he was running through the crowd, and what he didn't see was a curb, and he hit the curb and went flying, and put his left hand down, just the angle he was falling at. So really badly grazed his knees and his elbow and things, but at the same time managed to break his wrist day one of the holiday. So it meant that he couldn't do any cycling or kayaks and a paddle board, and so he couldn't really do that. So poor lad missed out on some of that stuff. And so, and now that we're back, there's a scout camp on, and which is a sort of featuring around water sport and abseiling, caving, and that sort of stuff. And of course, can't do that either. So he stayed at home while his brother's gone off to do that. So he's absolutely sick. And then there's a curling camp next week, which they're really keen to go to. And again, he may get his plaster off if it's healed sufficiently, but if not, he's going to be. You'll probably have to miss that as well. So he's really hacked off with the summer he's having. Poor chap. But it's just great to see that, get that balance, and we live in the Highlands, outdoors. I know. It's just by giving them the opportunity, and it's about encouragement, and
they'll get scrapes, but it's about getting them back on the bike and getting them back on into do whatever they're doing. And are any of them showing interest in the whiskey industry and them taking a?
To be honest, the younger three are a bit young. He's at university in Edinburgh now, so he's studying business economics, and in the first year he had an add-on of astrophysics, which he did very past, no problem at all. He loved it, and if he could, he would probably progress that a little bit, but he's struggling to figure exactly what he'll do with that. And so he loves it. He loves it as a subject. So he's focusing. So he's changing that, or that was changing anyway, and it's becoming marketing. So it's business economics and marketing, and he's a really good kid, and he's followed a wee bit more in his mum's footsteps in terms of he's managed to compete for Great Britain at curling already in the Youth Winter Olympics in Switzerland back in 2020. It's the January 2020 before the pandemic struck, and so he's got a nice balance, and he's bright, and he's a good kid. So he's got a huge amount of opportunity ahead of him and potential. So we be good to see somebody. And my cousins, all of them have got kids at the moment, bar cousin Claire and my sister as well. She doesn't have, but she just lives along the road from you guys. She's at Meldrum.
Oh, right.
It's behind Meldrum, Meldrum, and so it's going to be interesting to see, because the same principles apply. The whole point is that it's very dangerous for family businesses just to automatically either expect or assume or drive people to come into the business, because if it's not their bag, you'll actually hamper your business and you hamper the development of the business. And so it's really important you do things for the right reason, for the right person. If they want to go on and become whatever in life, professional sport.
There's a great Sky Atlantic program called Succession. I don't know if you've watched it with Brian Cox.
With Brian Cox, yeah.
Yeah, it's absolutely, it just shows you all the wrong things about involving your family in business. It's got to be, as you say, it's got to be the right thing. People have got to want to do it, and then they've got to earn the right, as you did.
Yeah, you have to earn the integrity. You have to behave with the right integrity. We earn people's trust around about you, demonstrate that you can abide by the values. But the risk as well is you could get somebody to come in and they'll work their socks off, and then they'll wake up one day and go, because the world is challenging, and people's jobs are challenging, so one day, and it could be the world's really against you, and you think, I'm going to be the generation that's going to cause this to fail, and the pressure and everything on you, you might just say, I want to run for the hills, I want to get away from this. So it's important that you do things for the right reason, because as I say, they could come in, work 10 years and wake up and go, I'm stuck in it. I could have gone off to London. I could have gone around the world. I could have done anything. I came to work in this, and it's now not going as planned, and it's a bit of a challenge, and it's alienating me from a family. I'm feeling letting everybody down. You could create an awful lot of pressure and tension. So it's really important that you do not get caught up in the romance of it. You do it for the right reasons. You do it because you have the people. You don't hang them out to dry. You do it for the right reasons. And here is the wonderful Juliet coming online.
Absolutely.
She's a mega star. She's a mega star.
Yes. Absolutely.
We'll teach you a few things about whiskey.
We had our first Whisky Academy that we ran a week-long course in March. Second one coming up September. And we had lined up to meet Billy Walker at Glenallachie Distillery as part of the day. Unfortunately, he wasn't too well, so he couldn't come up. And Juliet and Richard stepped in, and just fast, just so good, really interesting. And we had a Blether with Juliet as well not too long ago. And the talk about women in whiskey, women in sport, and all that. She's one of the pioneers here. She's absolutely doing fantastic.
She's a wonderful human being. You should see. She'll probably be too modest to say this, but when COVID struck, the things that Juliet did for the local community as well, absolutely in line with the values we've been talking about. Just brilliant. Created
the handfulls they were doing, they were donating money. I think was it Elgin Hospital.
She's always promoting Murray stuff as well on Facebook, and
she created a platform for people to businesses to engage, and it's for support local businesses, and really help drive the smaller businesses that were really beginning to struggle, and for consumers to engage with them, so they could buy local and support local. It was brilliant initiative that she just picked up and ran. That takes a great amount of heart and intelligence, of course, as well. So brilliant. She was just a superstar.
One downside to Juliet, I would say her timekeeping's not great. She's only joined us 2.5 hours in.
I know. I'm going to have to go now. So
just a final note on Juliet.
Bring her on.
One of the most remarkable things about having Juliet on the night we had her on was that I discovered that she used to work in the perfumery in Grasse, Fragerad, which I'd visited when I was in the south of France. So, and she was definitely there. She would have definitely been there when I visited. So, even though I can't fully remember, she probably would have been my guide that day.
Wow.
Which is quite remarkable, yeah.
I can't believe you wouldn't have remembered her. Such a wonderful, attractive young lady.
I'm too old to remember anything these days. That's the problem.
Obviously, you don't remember where your bikes are.
Sadly, I do. I'm also lazy. I think that's the problem.
Excellent, guys. Is there any other questions before we head?
I think Ian's probably past the question phase. He's saying the Glenrothes is going down far too easily. So we'll maybe let the guys carry on and sup up on their drams. Listen, Stephen, thank you so very, very much for coming on tonight. I know we've been chatting a wee bit in recent times, but no, thanks so much for coming on. It's been an absolutely fantastic chat. As Mike and I say almost every week that we're on with people, we need to do this again sometime. So Stephen Rankin Part 2, we'll definitely get that arranged at some point in the future, and hopefully we'll see a lot more of you as days go by anyway. And we'll maybe just get you to hold on 2 seconds when we go off live. But just for the guys, next week we're going to be talking to Jonathan Christie from the Cabric Trust, and Alan Winster is going to come along and tell us about the new distillery in the Cabric as well. So really interesting week for us next week as well, guys. So please join us again next week, and we'll be blethering again with another great in the industry.
Looking forward to that. It's going to be an interesting one. See what they're doing. Given the hit again, the Cabric. Wonderful history, although rather more underground than Gordon MacPhail's history. But really looking forward to that.
A wee bit more rough and ready.
Isn't it so exciting? Because obviously, Peter Grant Gordon of William Grant, of course, he's such a huge supporter of it, and it's great to see them investing so much back in what is ultimately the local community and driving the old traditions and putting that distillery back in the Cabric. It's just great to see.
Absolutely fantastic.
Really looking forward to it. So thank you very much.
Very much for having me. Thanks to everybody who's come online. Thanks for all the comments we saw tonight. And guys, all the best in life and business. Slán Java. Thank you for having me.
Long may the one week.
Slán Java.
Good night, guys. See you next week.
See you next week if we don't see you in the shop. Any questions for guys who are maybe watching afterwards, pop them in the chat, and if we can forward them on to Stephen, hopefully you could maybe give us a reply, and we can put that on as well. So thank you very much, guys. We'll see you next week.
Cheers, guys.